there's one thing, and you touched on it, like you start a business as a chef or a bartender, you haven't got a fucking clue about business. You haven't got a clue about how to run a functioning team. You just haven't got a clue about all these things. How to run a P&L, how to fundraise, how to raise capital, how to speak to investors, how to speak to banks, how to negotiate deals. None of that is on your radar. You just want to cook food, serve drinks, look after people. That part is incredibly important, and I never want to take, because ultimately none of it works if you don't have that part right. But I knew we had that part right. All of the other stuff was a shambles. Like, we ran the company like a shambles, and that was really where I seen this is how I best serve the company, by learning this, by developing my ability so I can grow this, you know.
This episode is brought to you by Restaurant Systems Pro.
With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, the founder and managing partner of the Dead Rabbit, Jack McGarry. My man, Jack, are you feeling unstoppable today?
I am feeling very unstoppable.
Yeah,
I'm excited
bro.
to chat with you.
Dude, you are unstoppable, man. Like, I've read your stories. I probably gave myself too much time to research you because yesterday's interview canceled, so I had all this I was in your restaurant literally all day yesterday, editing and just being a fly on the wall. And you're a bartender's bartender, man. And like, that's kind of like I think that would, I won't make you agree to that statement, but I kind of feel like that's how the industry sees you. There's a lot of respect for you in this industry. Your values are amazing. Just from the interview that I listened, I think it was Tastemakers or something like that. You did an interview, and I was like, this guy and I are gonna have fun. So, and just to give the listeners an idea of who we're talking to, 8 Tales of the Cocktails Awards, 5 World's 50 Best Bar Awards, including World's Best Bar twice, and you're also the youngest ever recipient of the International Bartender Award, 5 cookbooks. But aside from maybe the cookbooks, this is the part I like about you the most. You don't give a fuck about all that shit.
No,
which is the best part, man.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I mean, I cared when I was younger, but you when you grow up, and I'm still young, obviously, but the more experience you have, I'm nearly 2 decades in. Next year's 2 decades, and you just realize that it's all a pile of shit, to be honest with you. You know?
Right. And that's kind of one of the things I picked up on surrounding myself with all these amazing people. And when I say transform the industry, that's one of the things I think we need to transform is the culture of what it means to be successful. Yeah. You know, and I think that's going to come out in your story. I don't want to get too far ahead, but before we really dive into who you are and how you got to where you are today, let's get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for me? And tip that microphone down for me real quick. Just pivot it down. Yeah, perfect. Better. Yep.
In terms of one that I would go back to, and it goes back to what we were just talking about. It would be Teddy Roosevelt's quote: "Comparison is the thief of joy."
Oh, comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah, so because I feel like in a lot of the world that a lot of us live in today, with social media, instant gratification, awards, comparing yourself and wanting what others have. Everybody's on their own journeys. Everybody's hustling and grafting. Yeah, so that's one that if I'm not exactly where I want to be, or I see somebody slightly ahead of me, that I go back to.
I'm writing this one down. Comparison is the thief of joy. I thought you were going to do the man in the arena for a second, which is another.
Oh, well, that's a fantastic. Yeah. I mean, he has a few stonkers in terms of motivational quotes.
Dude, that's a good one. I'm so happy you shared that, because lately I've been kind of public about, like, even when I talk to other restaurant podcasters, I'm like, no offense, dude or gal, like, I haven't listened to your show. Yeah. And it's because I don't want to compare myself to you. And even on social media, I see what everyone else is doing out there, and I just instantly get up in my head, and I'm like, oh man, should I be doing that too? Or like, you know, it just muckies the water. Yeah,
100%. And I think, again, going back to, I started in this industry when I was 15. I'm now 34. It was quite toxic having that type of relationship with other people. Like, you're constantly wanting what others have. You need external validation. And I think once you flip the script on that, then you're introspective and you're following your sort of North Star and where you want to go. You can have a better relationship to looking at what other people are doing. You know, if I go out to bars or I see what other people are doing on social media, and it triggers an idea that goes back again, that speaks to the North Star, that speaks to where you want to go, then that's a healthy relationship, as opposed to looking at other people and like wanting what they have, or messing with your head in terms of, am I doing the right thing? Do you know, if you know exactly where you're going, you know exactly who you are.
Right. Right.
Do you know, it's a completely different conversation at that point.
Dude, and what I'm feeling as you're sharing this, it's making me think that there is no right way to do anything.
No.
There's just the best way for you.
100%.
And that's one of the things, like, as somebody who started this podcast to get answers, I was driving myself crazy because I was like, what's the answer?
Yeah.
And like, it's all relative it's relative to the person, and there is no right way. There's only the best way for you. So yeah, man, great way to get this thing started. And where does it make sense to start sharing your story? Take us to the beginning.
So the beginning in the industry, or the beginning?
The beginning for you, I guess.
The beginning in the industry.
Or wait, in the industry. I was the beginning. Are you talking about the Big Bang? Yeah, for you in the industry. But if it makes sense to go beyond that, man, take us back to where you think it makes sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think to go back to the original moment that sort of sparked my intensity and obsession and quest for sort of perfection, or our version of that, it really was when I was 14, and I moved schools from, so the schooling system is a bit different in Europe that is in America. So secondary schools are what you would go to if you haven't done well. You haven't done well in school, and that's before you go to college. But grammar schools would be if you'd done well, and then you would move from a grammar. So both schools you move to college if you're the grades, but grammar schools are like the elite. So I was in secondary school and moved to a grammar school because my father was a groundskeeper in the school, and I thought that I would just coast. You know, it would be grand. And I remember there was a chemistry, one of my first exams. I think it was my first exam, when I went into the grammar school ecosystem and culture, done the exam, didn't really think anything of it, and then it was the third period, so it was basically the period just before you had your break, and the teacher read the results from top to bottom, and I came in dead last.
So how the class performed from the highest score to the lowest.
The lowest score. So I was the lowest score by quite a distance, and after that class, and we went to break, and I remember sitting on a table and sitting by myself and basically making a pact with myself at that point when I was 13, 14 years old, saying that I wouldn't give anybody the opportunity to ever say that about me again. So if I'm going to do something, I'm all in. If I'm going to do something, that's going to be the absolute best that I can do. And it was not long after that so back then I was constantly asking my mum and dad for a land of money, which was...
What's a land of money?
A land, so LEND, like land, a lender. So asking for £10 or £5 or £20.
Just a bunch of money.
Yeah, and I say land because it's ironic, because there was absolutely zero intention of paying it back. And I think my mum and dad got fed up with me constantly, because you're at that age where you're starting to want nicer things, you're trying to impress girls.
Is that what you wanted the money for, to get nicer things?
Yeah. Like I think at that point it was to get the latest Manchester United jersey or something like that. And my mum turned around and said, if you want something in life, son, you need to go out and earn it. And my dad was in the room, and he said that if you want to earn some money, my cousin is his cousin, so like my second cousin, ran the bar literally down the bottom of the street called the Hunting Lodge. It was in West Belfast, and I went and met him, and I was 15 years old, and that was basically my start. So I started there, and there was a bar manager called Marty Tolan, and he said that the previous barback or glass collector, as they were better known back then, was the best he'd ever worked with. And that was like a red flag to build with me, with the chemistry sort of thing that just happened the year before. So that's where it started out.
So were you 14 years old when the chemistry, when you got that low score?
Yeah.
Tell me, you kind of breezed over. You said that once hearing this, you never wanted to be at the bottom again. You made it your personal goal. But how did it make you feel? Really take us to like that moment when you're like, why hasn't my name been mentioned yet? And then all of a sudden it's the last one that's mentioned. What were you feeling? Well,
in that moment, I knew my name was coming last. You know, I wasn't anticipating that the teacher. I mean, there's a. I don't think that's great teaching.
I think we've come a little way.
Yeah, it's like it's a shame tactic. Mm-hmm. It's not that sort of
shit, man. It worked.
Yeah, it worked. Listen, that's the thing. I have a paradoxical relationship with the fact that the teacher did it.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful because it lit the fire. But that obsessiveness, that perfectionism, that like I don't take anything less than best in class. It's like that envelops
Blessing and a curse.
Yeah, it is. It's because it goes towards the like my brain doesn't turn off, and I had a breakdown 7.5 years ago with addiction issues and mental health problems, and I think a lot of it started because like I can trace a lot of it back to that moment because I've just always been striving to achieve. So I'm thankful for it, but I'm also I've like a complicated relationship with it, you know.
Yeah, for sure. So you have this new outlook where you want to be the best at everything. You get this job. The bartender is like the person before you was the best. So this lights a fire under your ass, essentially. We're like, oh well, I'll show you.
100%. Yeah. It was like, again, it wasn't any high stakes, but you were back then. The smoking ban was in place, and literally what you were doing was cleaning ashtrays, collecting glasses, cleaning glasses, stocking the bar, a bar back essentially.
Yeah.
And my whole raison d'etre at that point was to prove him wrong.
Yeah.
And show that I was the best barback ever, or the best barback he'd ever worked with, and it was just full complete focus on proving myself and proving him wrong. And once I got started into the bar world, it definitely did light a fire. Like a lot of it was that conversation with him, but it quickly went beyond that. Like the hustle and bustle of the bar industry, the social component of it, the chivalry, the companionship with the team, and it was very tangible. You know, doing a great job in a bar or a restaurant or in your company, it's tangible. Like even what you're doing, you can see what excellence looks like very, very early. So I love that I love that relationship.
Instant
to it,
gratification.
Yes, yeah.
Did you do a good job or a bad job? The guests will let you know instantly.
100%. And that's it's intoxicating. It's also it's really annoying. You know, I take the customer experience extremely seriously in the bar. I read every single review. I respond to them. I investigate any type of issues. So when you get those good ones, you feel like when you get the review that somebody has noticed all the touch points of your strategy or your raison d'etre or your mission, it's intoxicating. But it's also maddening when you see somebody coming in, they've had a terrible experience. You know, I'm always, like I asked you just before we started, how was your experience? And you're always like, you don't know what way it's going to go. But thankfully I have a good relationship with it now. But it did start when I first started in that bar in West Belfast. It was like I haven't really looked back. My point when I started in the bar industry, I was going to go on and I wanted to be a teacher and go back into university and stuff like that. But as soon as I started in the bar industry, it was off to the races.
But isn't it ironic that you are a teacher? Like,
yeah, but I don't know. I don't look at myself as a teacher because I mean, you can speak to the team here. I'm not, and you can speak to my wife. I'm not renowned for being patient. You know, I have if I show you the way and I tell you the way and I walk the way and people aren't doing it,
that's the standard.
Yeah, I don't have
swimmer sink, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I think, but at some point you have, like, especially when you were just opening this place, you were probably hands-on with most of the staff. I would imagine
100%,
there's a few layers between you and training at this point because you're focused on scaling, right? But you have to be a teacher to be good at this work. Your job as a restaurant, or as an owner in any business, in my personal opinion, is to lift other people up.
100%.
Is to empower them, right? So, like,
I would say coach. I would be more teaching. To me, it's a bit of a softer world where there's I'm a very direct communicator. I'm very good at recognizing great performance, but I'm also very strong at we need to have conversations and here's what it looks like. I read a great book a few years ago now from Kim Scott, Radical Candor.
Yes.
And her whole philosophy is caring personally and challenging directly, and I that would be my MO. You know, I care about the team. I invest heavily into the team, but I communicate. Like if I see something that's not right, they're going to know about it right away.
And it's not because I want to hurt your feelings.
No,
it's because
absolutely
I
not.
want you to know the truth.
Yeah.
So we can grow together.
Yeah.
You know. And
you're not breaking people down. You're building them up.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, and there's so much. You save so much time and energy with directness.
Yeah.
And setting that precedence in the beginning to say this is how we communicate, and it's for this reason.
100%.
Yeah, it's super powerful. So going back to your story, you were born and raised in Belfast.
Yeah.
You got your job working in this bar. You're climbing the ladder. You're proving to this boss that you are the best he's ever seen. You fall in love with it because you just love the instant gratification, knowing that you're doing an excellent job and getting that sense of approval instantly. You end up at a really amazing place, The Merchant. How'd you get there? That was 2006 to 2009.
Yeah, so
How much time elapsed from you getting into? So you were 15
3
years old.
years.
So you were 18 when you
Yeah,
got.
I
Wow.
started-
So you
yeah.
started really young.
Yeah.
So was there anything that I'm skipping over? A key lesson, a key evolution for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, so the cousin who ran the hunting lodge, his two lessons that he imparted on me were the importance of loyalty.
That's such a badass name for a restaurant.
Yeah,
by the way.
I know.
Hunting Lodge.
It's a typical Belfast name for
Yeah.
a place, but yeah, it was a good spot. So his whole thing was loyalty to the team, loyalty to the company, and his other thing was don't steal.
Don't steal.
Don't steal. So I had him as the general manager, and then I had the bar manager who said that the previous barback was the best that he ever had. So they were two key moments, and because he was quite successful, he got an opportunity to run a bar in the city centre of Belfast. So the Hunting Lodge is and still is, it's a neighbourhood bar. So a lot of these bars in Belfast, in the outside the city centre, they would have been major community type experiences, because a lot of people didn't go into the city centre because of the troubles with the Protestant and Catholic sort of sectarian violence and stuff like that. So being in the city centre would have been quite dangerous back in the day. But thankfully, after the Good Friday Agreement in '98, that changed, and a lot of people from both sides of the community started going to the city centre. So on the back of that, you started getting a lot of investment in the bars and restaurants opening in the city centre, and there was a bar that opened called Cafe Vaudeville, and my cousin got the opportunity to become the general manager of that. That was a really, really opulent, over the top style bar that he got the opportunity to run. And when he asked me to join him, I followed him around essentially, and when I was in Cafe Vaudeville, that was the first time I'd seen somebody making cocktails. So these bars outside the city centre, you go for pints of Guinness or highballs or stuff like that, but you're not going for a world-class cocktail experience, you know. So I remember seeing this bartender, Kieran Breen, who was another pivotal person in my life at that point.
This was Karen, you said?
Kieran
Breen,
and he was making a round of drinks for two couples. So you had two guys and two women, and you could just see the way he moved. He'd been trained properly. You'd never seen a bartender move like that before in Belfast, because most 9 times out of 10 they're just pulling pints. So he had the way he moved. He had the two couples captivated. They were mesmerized by the way that he was moving, and these 4 drinks just appeared, and he puts them in front of the couples, and the couples taste them, and their experience, like the way that they responded to him, the way he made them, like the performance of him making these drinks, and then the response to the actual drink itself, like they were absolutely blown away.
The entire experience, from
blew them
the
away.
Entertainment of the preparation to the actual experience of the drink itself.
100%, and it was really at that moment. So before that moment, it was all about being the best barback. That moment when I seen that, I was like, I need to become a cocktail bartender. I need to do that. And that, like, I went up to him straight afterwards, and I'm like, how did you do that? Talk to me. And I just started getting really into it. I started buying cocktail books at that point. I started going to cocktail courses and different bits and pieces. But I still, at that stage, I was like 15, 16.
Dude, this is 2006. To give the listeners some perspective, this is 2006. You opened Dead Rabbit in 2012. You're 18 in 2006.
Yeah.
You're 24 in 2012.
Yeah.
Like, when you see something and you want it, like, you have to be all in to go from that level.
I was nonstop. You know,
Yeah.
it's one thing, like, married now and have kids, and I speak to my wife, and you look back and you're like, I never you look back now and you see kids like my sister has kids and they're entering that sort of age that I was, and they're kids. They're behaving like kids, and they're going to enjoy their friends and going to concerts and stuff. There was none of that for me. I didn't do any of that. You know, it was single foot. Like I remember going on trips with the guys to Spain.
Yeah.
And I was bringing cocktail books with me, you know, while everybody else was
R&D.
partying and getting laid or whatever. You know, I was all I cared about was cocktails.
Yeah.
So that meeting him, and then he moved. My cousin went to another bar, called in the Lisburn Road called Tattoo, and he left, but I stayed because I didn't want to keep moving around, and I wanted to work with the guy Kieran Breen, who I met in Cafe Vaudeville. So he actually came and worked at Tattoo, and he was a bar manager, and he sort of took me under his wing. I was like 16, 17 at this point, and he really took me under his wing, showed me the cocktail industry, brought me to connoisseurs clubs, brought me to meet the movers and shakers in Ireland. And he then introduced me to Sean Muldoon, who was my business partner here. He's since exited the business 2 years ago, but he really laid all of the foundations for me to succeed. And Tattoo unfortunately closed, but Kieran went out of his way to have a meeting with Sean, who was then running the bar at the Merchant Hotel, which won. It ended up winning four or five tails of the cocktail awards in Ireland.
It's a beautiful looking hotel.
Oh, it's stunning.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. And Kieran went to Sean's house and said, listen, this bar's closing, I'm losing my job. And Sean thought that he was going to ask him for a job in the Merchant, but Kieran said, no, I want you to take Jack from Tattoo, because if we lose, because at that point I was hemming and hawing about going back into university, and you know, I was invigorated by cocktails, but the bar closing, it could have went either way.
So this wasn't your career at this point in your life. You're not like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, because at that, working in Tattoo, I was already winning Ireland's best bartender.
Oh wow.
You know, so I was like, what more? I just was unsure. I love the industry, but I wasn't 1000% fully committed to for life.
When did that happen for you?
So that happened. Kieran met Sean, and they had this dinner in the back garden of his house, and Kieran said, you need to hire this kid Jack, because I think I was not even 18 at this point. And Sean said, like, why? What is it about this? So I'd met Sean already at that point. We'd seen each other at like industry things. And Kieran's response was, if you don't hire Jack, Ireland is going to lose its greatest ever bartender. And I'm not saying that for ego reasons. Like, you can speak to Kieran and Sean. That's what Kieran said to Sean, and Sean was like, right, leave it with me. So people didn't leave the Merchant because it was the best paid job in the industry in Belfast. So I ended up bouncing around, working in a bunch of different spots. And
I don't think I understood that people did not leave the Merchant because it wasn't the best paid.
It was the best paid.
So okay,
yeah.
Cool.
So they got a job in the Merchant because it was the first bar in the city centre that charged service charge for everything.
Okay.
So you're like, the way we have tips here, that was the only bar in Belfast that sort of had that same model. So you were making your normal hourly rate plus the tips, which was unheard of back home. So because of that, people didn't leave. So when Kieran said to Sean, you need to hire Jack, there wasn't a job for me.
Yeah.
He had to wait until somebody left, which ended up taking like 6 or 7 months.
Wow.
So I just ended up bouncing around bars downtown.
It's a good way to get perspective, though. It's good. It's good to. I think it's everyone. You want to offer yourself that perspective in the industry, because you might. I don't know. Like there's only one. There is no one way to do anything. There's just the right way for you.
Yeah.
So getting that perspective helps you kind of craft your own.
100%.
Like 100%. What works best for you. Yeah.
So yeah, they came around and offered me the job in December of 2005. And I was hemming and hawing. Because I was working in a bar called The Apartment in Belfast, and it was a high volume cocktail bar. I was working with a lot of friends, you know, I was starting to enjoy it, so I wasn't sure. So I didn't fully commit to joining the Merchant. I was also nervous because the Merchant, I knew the Merchant was the bar in Ireland. It was already winning all the local awards all over Ireland, and it was winning UK awards.
Wow.
So I knew you were going from being the big dog in the apartment to being the small dog in the merchant, and you're going to be really tested. So I was like, I wasn't sure if that was the case, and Sean said, listen, I'm going to keep this job open all throughout December. So this is Christmas time. I'm going to go into the Christmas period without a bar, like with one bartender down. And then he came to me in January and he said, right, I need you to either commit or not commit. And I said, right, I'm ready. And then I came around to the merchant. I had a meeting with him at table 1 in the Merchant Hotel cocktail bar. And he basically showed me 2 pieces of ice. So one piece of ice was perfectly clear and perfectly cut. So it was a cube, and a highball cube that you could see straight through, beautifully cut. That is a prerequisite in cocktail bars nowadays. But back then, that like you're talking 2006. That was not normal.
Yeah.
And then he had another piece of ice which was a normal cube from an ice machine. It was jagged and it had imperfections in it. Yeah, cloudy, not great. And he said, listen, there's 2 types of people in this world. There's people that do this way, like perfection, chase perfection, or there's people that don't care. If you work here, you're going to be this person in terms of the perfect cube, going fully in, and that's really when I realized that I'd met a kindred spirit there in terms of this is somebody that wants to chase this to the very end. So I joined 2 weeks later, and that was the start of that whole adventure with the merchant.
Beautiful. Was there a struggle with the merchant? Was it like you just walked right in and you're still the best bartender in Ireland? Like, I got this, no issues? Or like, was there like a challenge once you got there?
Oh, I mean, it was incredibly challenging.
What was the challenge? What was the struggle for you?
So I knew as soon as I started, like when I started, there was a lot of talk in the Irish bartending scene about this young bartender that so I was walking in with people already knew who I was in the cocktail scene in Ireland.
So the pressure?
Not real. Because I was 18. I was completely fear. I had no fear.
Yeah.
So I went in. I was nervous. I was nervous the first shift. But within a week or 2, I was like, right, I know what. Like, wow. I'm gonna get after this. But the biggest challenge would be the knowledge base. You know, Sean basically opened the door in terms of like at that point I wouldn't been reading books from like Ben Reed, like entry level bartender books, where Sean was very like, you need to speak to Dave Wondridge, you need to speak to Dale DeGroff, you need to
I was waiting for that name to come with Dale.
The Gaz Regan and Audrey Saunders and
Dale's
Sasha.
On my radar. I'd love to get him on the show. He's
Dale's the
New
best.
York,
Yeah, he is. Yeah. He's somebody you should definitely speak to.
All right.
I can connect you guys after. He's a godfather, you know. He's where it all started.
Yeah. I feel like I got to get through a couple of his books before I have him on the show. Give him that respect. So the challenge was just drinking from a fire hose of information.
100%.
How'd you overcome it?
It actually feels a bit. There's that scene in the Matrix where like Neo gets plugged in and it's like all that. It's just completely overloaded with the code. That's what it felt like. So it was really like that for the first couple of months until I started to settle. And then Sean realized like I'm a sponge, you know. As soon as I'm exposed to it, as soon as I see it once, it's there, it's done. And as I said, I was 18. I did not do it. Like there was all my friends had the latest pin-up model on their walls. I had pictures of Dale and like Charles Vaxon and like Rich Hunt, the best bartenders in the world at that stage, because that's where I wanted to go. He gave me the space to chase that, you know, to make the mistakes, to fail forward. And it was that's really all it was, you know. I within a couple of months I had the command of behind the bar, because Sean was never really a bartender per se. He was like an operator or a leader. So I sort of assumed the leadership behind the bar, completely revamped the way that we did things and the recipes. And when the likes of, we had this thing called the Connoisseurs Club, where the best in the industry all over the world were flying into Belfast to talk to the local consumers. But after they done their sessions and workshops, they sat with me. Like I remember sitting with Audrey Saunders until like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, when the breakfast team were coming in to start to set up for the for the breakfast service for the hotel guests, and we were there. We were making, I think at that point we were making a Brooklyn, and we made it about 40 or 50 times. You know, so my exposure to absolute elite level people in the industry was second to none. So it wasn't just Sean that was teaching me. I was learning with, like, again, Audrey, Sasha, Tony Canigliaro, Dale DeGroff, Gaz Regan, like, you name them, they came through the bar. And
what was that like when you first met these people that were pinned up on your walls, you know, in your teens?
I mean, it was nuts, completely nuts. You know, I go into bars now and you order drinks and you see the shaky hands, and I'm an anxious person, so when I see it, I feel like saying to the person, "Can you stop? Because you're making me anxious." But that's going to have the complete adverse result. But back then, I was that bartender. You know, I was. You know, they essentially hold your hand and say, "Listen, like, we're all just making cocktails here, but like, show me the way." And they all loved my. They all loved my obsessiveness. They knew, like, when I first met Dave Wandridge, I had Imbibe, and every single page was marked. Like, there was dog ear, there was indexes on it, and he seen it, and he's like, Jesus, I've never seen a book like his book marked like that, you know. So they all seen that I was so ambitious, so driven, so obsessive. So I mean, it was phenomenal. You know, it was nerve-wracking when they come in. You're stressed out. You're in the bar the whole week before, making sure every single piece of the bar is spotless. And you know,
dude, I'm loving this, man. But what's going through my mind right now is just the power of the surrounding yourself with the right people.
Oh, 100%.
And once you can break through and get to the point where you're in the same room as these people, and if you have it, if the desire is there and you want it, and it's evident, it's clear that you're going places, that shit's like rocket fuel.
100%.
They're gonna connect you to whoever. That's what happens, you know. And I think that's honestly, like, I kind of beat up on like going to culinary school today, and like how I don't really think it's a good investment. But if there is one benefit of going to culinary school, is if you have that piss and vinegar inside of you and you want it, those professors are gonna leapfrog you
100%
to the right places. And these were your professors. These were the masters of the trade, the people who are like, this guy's going somewhere, and they're gonna literally dump rocket fuel on you and let you on fire, man. You're gonna take off.
And that's what happened. You know, so it's like that tutelage that I had. I just don't think at that period of the industry, and even where we are now, nobody gets that now. Like, you can be in these bar conferences, but back then the scene was so formative. It wasn't this big industry like that we have now. It's huge. You've 30,000 people going to Tales of the Cocktail. Back then it was much smaller. So I mean, you're right. You create your own luck with the way that you show up, but yeah, I was very fortunate that was the time where I came through. You know, it was if I came through now. Listen, I'm confident in my own ability, but I'm very glad I came through the period that I came through, and you know.
Yeah, man. I'm loving this. I think now is a good time. Actually, is there anything else you did go? Actually, now is a good time to take the break to thank our sponsors. We'll be right back, and we'll start to talk about why you chose to come to the States.
Yeah, 100%.
We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that right now, Restaurant Systems Pro is offering a no-strings-attached 60-day trial that will help you improve your systems, increase your profit, and find better work-life balance. All you have to do is click the link below.
We're back, and I want to focus on the evolution of the Dead Rabbit and where you are today and where you're headed, because I think there's such a wealth of knowledge you can probably depart on myself and my listeners, but I don't want to skip over anything key. So you're in Belfast, you're working at the Merchant, you're there from 06 to 09, and in 09 you find yourself in New York City.
Yeah.
What happened? Just take us like fast forward. You're zooming 30,000 feet in a jet, and just tell us like what's going on below you as you're flying through.
Yeah, so I mean, it all happened very fast. So started, as you said, in 2006. Got stronger and became a hell of a lot better throughout my time there. And then we had won every single local award, every single UK award. And that's when we started to shift our attention to the global awards, and that was back in those times. That's when Tales of the Cocktail were just starting.
Yeah.
So in 2006, 2000, and going into 2007, it was only New York bars that won it. So you'd Pegu Club, you'd Milk and Honey, and it became me and Sean's raison d'etre, our North Star, to win Tales of the Cocktail Awards. And we got nominated. Like, we were bringing all of these judges over. They seen what we were doing. Everybody was talking about the bar. But in 2007, we were nominated for 3. We lost every single one. And that was a crushing loss, because we genuinely believed that what we were doing was incredibly special, and the lengths that we went to. You know, we were making our own ice in Belfast. We were making our own syrups. We were juicing everything. We went all in, and we lost all 3. And we went up to the president, essentially, of Tales of the Cocktail on the spirit side, and said, "Why do we lose? Like, tell us how we can improve and come back stronger."
Do you remember what he told you?
Yeah, so he said, so the Connoisseurs Club up until that point, again, this
Paul Tunerman at the time?
No, so this was Simon Difford.
Okay.
So Simon Difford from Class Magazine. So Paul and Anne owned it at that stage, as you know, but they did not adjudicate the award side. They had nothing to do with that, at least as far as I know. So we went up and asked Simon, what do we do to be in the conversation, or how do we come back stronger? And he was like, you guys are doing a great job of bringing European and UK luminaries to the bar with the Connoisseurs Club. Like, we were bringing over Ian Burrell, you had Stanislav Vardna, you had all those sort of big key industry people in the UK and Europe, but they did not vote for they were not the American. So we didn't have the Americans over. So he was like, look at the Irish coffee story. The Irish coffee was invented in Ireland, sure.
Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, it was made famous in America.
Yeah.
So he's like, you either need to do one of 2 things. You need to bring your bar to the judges, or you need to bring the judges to your bar.
You need a politic.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, this is before, like, now it's so normal to pop up in places and guest bartenders and these seminars and stuff. None of this shit was happening back then. This was all brand new. So it was really after he said that, we were like, right, we're only bringing American judges, literally judges. Like, we went after the judges and said, you're coming over to do a session in the bar. So at that point, it shifted to Dale DeGroff, Gary Reagan, Audrey Saunders, Sasha Petrosky, Jeff Barry, Wayne Curtis. All of them were judges. And what we believed is, if we got them into the bar, we showed them what we did, and that network that you were talking about, they would create momentum for us. They would go back and say, these guys are absolutely crushing. You need to go. You need to check it out. And the very next year after we did that, we won all 3. But it was during that time. So obviously that was a big thing. It was during that time that a guy called Connor Allen appeared on our scene. So we were at the top of the world in terms of, we had won 3 awards. A lot of people at that time were calling our story the sort of Slumdog Millionaire story, because we were the first bar ever outside of America to win Tales of the Cocktail Awards. You know, like world's best this and world's best that, and that was during the time where Slumdog Millionaire won like 3 or 4 awards at the Oscars. So this guy appeared, and he loved what we were doing. He traveled all over the world with his company. He got into the cocktail scene. He actually got into cocktails coming to the Merchant Hotel, coming to the bar. And because of his travel, we connected him. He went to Tokyo, and we said, you need to see Ueno-san. He went to Prague. We were like, you need to see Stanislav Vardner. He went to San Francisco. We were like, you need to see Julio Bermejo. And he's seen pretty much every great cocktail bar in the world. And his belief was that what we were doing in Belfast was incredibly special. And obviously there's a bias there because he's Irish. We're Irish, you know, so I get that. But his whole thing was, his company was just brought over by the stock exchange, and he was moving to New York, and he was like, you guys should bring what you do in Belfast to New York. And it was during that time, literally at that exact time, that the bar then, so we won 3 1 year. The next year we won World's Best Bar. The first bar ever that was not in New York to win a World's Best Cocktail Bar award. And
you were there when that happened.
Yeah,
what was that like?
I was. I mean, I wasn't even old enough to get in the fucking casino, you know. So I didn't even get the chance to get onto the award stage. But I was in my hotel room, and I was absolutely bouncing all over the place. And thankfully, when the awards finished, that's when I was able to join the party. But
was it 21 to gamble?
21 to get into casinos.
Yeah.
I think at that stage I was maybe 19, 20.
Okay.
So I mean, it was incredible. But as soon as then we got back, then the conversation, like we handed our notice in, and we were like, right, we're going to do this. And the only thing he said to us was, don't build a bar that's going to be here today and gone tomorrow. Build a bar, build a 100-year bar, build an institution. And that's really what was the catalyst behind bringing the Irish pub scene together with the cocktail scene, because up until that point, you had the cocktail scene was really defined by speakeasies and 5-star hotel bars. So there was a pretentiousness about that. There was rules and regulations. Where we loved, like we're Irish. We come from like a egalitarian, democratized space in the pub. So we wanted to make cocktails not pretentious. We wanted to make cocktails fun. We wanted to bring together those two things. And that was a catalyst for the Dead Rabbit story, you know.
Yeah, man. So you come to the States in 2009. You didn't land in New York and open the Dead Rabbit.
I wish. Yeah.
Yeah, like what you get here. What was the strategy to get open?
Yeah. So as soon as we even before we put our notice in, as soon as he said, build this bar that won't be here today and gone tomorrow, and we settled on Irish pub cocktail, bring it together. Then it became about how do we actually make this, because you can't just open a pub and a cocktail bar and call it McGarry's and it makes sense. It has to make sense strategically, conceptually. So that's really where we started researching the confluence of the Irish immigrant and the cocktail movement, because we knew that obviously with the Great Hunger in the 19th century, millions of Irish immigrants were arriving to the shores of America, and we also knew that back and during that time, you had the advent of the first golden era of the cocktail movement. You know, you had the first luxury hotels, you had the first celebrity bartenders like Orson Willard, Shed Sterling, Harry Johnson, Jerry Thomas.
This is the late 19th century, right?
This be middle of the 19th century, middle to the end.
1850s.
Yeah, 1850s onwards, particularly towards the end.
Yeah.
So during that 50-year span from middle of the 19th century onwards, we knew that those two things were happening in New York City. And that's where we really started to figure out how can we...
So you have this culture of cocktails evolving. For the first time, bitters are being made, and have you ever read the book America Walks Into a Bar?
Yeah, that's a fantastic
dude.
book.
It's such a good book.
Fantastic
oh
book.
My god! But they get into a lot of this in that book. The other one, if you haven't, have you heard of Drunk? Edward Slingerland is the author.
I don't think I've read that one.
It's an anthropological approach to alcohol over human existence.
Oh, I'll have to add that to the reading list.
It's so fascinating. I'll introduce you to Edward because I'm trying to get the word out about his book.
Amazing.
You could be a good evangelist for him. But anyway, like they get into a lot of like the history of alcohol over time, and not just the history of alcohol, but its influence on humanity, which is really cool. So if you guys are interested in this era that Jack is talking about right now, pick up those books as they get into it. It's 100%. Fascinating stuff. So keep going.
Yeah, so it was really figuring out how... So we knew that those two movements were happening. So the Irish influx into America, the advent of the cocktail movement, and we moved over to New York, and the research intensified rapidly. We knew that we wanted to call the bar the Dead Rabbit, because we wanted a name that spoke to like Irish pub culture. You know, we have a lot of bars like the Lamb and the Hen or the Chick. Like there's all those types of names, and so we didn't want it to be like a weird geeky name or a name named after a cocktail or something like that. You know, just that's not what the strategy was. So we had the name, and we landed and we started researching the confluence of those two eras. So we with more research and bugging people like Dave Ondridge, unbelievably bugging him, we really understood that the immigrants were landing, and they populated Water Street and the 5 Points, and then the luxury hotels and the sporting men's cocktail lounges, as they were known back then, would have been on Broadway. So you really had these two worlds coexisting. You had the squalor of Water Street. Charles Dickens famously called it the most dangerous and violent street.
It's crazy how it turned into being like Water Street is like now like Wall Street.
I know, yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, the types of bars that would have been dominating that street would have been like McSorley's. So sawdust strewn floors, very boisterous tap rooms, beer, whiskey. You know, like immigrant filled taverns. And then coexisting with that, you had the cocktail movement, the cocktail bars. So we had our pub and we had our cocktail movement coexisting in the same downtown area. And then we came across this building which sort of anchors, like Broadway is just literally a couple of streets away. We're on Water Street. This building was built in 1828.
Nice.
It all started to come together, and then the one-time leader of the Dead Rabbit, John Morrissey, who's our sort of mascot, he enveloped both those eras. So he arrived from Ireland when he was 3 years old. He ended up coming to New York when he was 18. Started running rackets on Water Street. He became he ended up moving to San Francisco during the gold rush, got involved with running gambling saloons, came back, befriended Jerry Thomas, opened bars with Jerry Thomas, became a senator, became a congressperson, founded Saratoga Racetrack, was a one-time leader of the Dead Rabbit, he achieved all of this, and he died at 48. So he brought together, he lived the pub, he lived the higher end society. Unreal. The Irish story, or the Irish story and the American dream. So that's like John Morrissey was the linchpin of bringing these two things together. And then we found this site, and that's really where we were like, right, we're going to have a pub on the first floor, which we call our top room. We're going to have a cocktail bar on our second floor, which we're going to call the parlor. And then the third floor, which we're sitting in, is our occasional room. And we opened in February 12th of 2013. So we're, as you alluded to previously, we're in our 10th year of operations. You know, so it hasn't really stopped since we started.
Dude, that's wild. And what I want to pull out for the listeners is this idea of like not just opening a restaurant for the sake of opening one, or a bar for that matter, but really like getting intentional and having it strike a chord, and having there be a story, and pulling in history, and literally having a story of what happened and how this space is a tribute to what was happening in this time, and having it being close to you.
100%.
You know, and the people behind it. And when you really take the time to be intentional and tell a story, and not just sling cocktails, but to educate people. And I think that's the other cool thing that we really haven't gotten into yet. You weren't just like giving people cocktails. Like you're not only is there a story behind the bar, right, but there's also a story behind every drink.
There's a story, honestly, there's a story behind every single thing we do.
Yeah. Get us into the power of story.
Yeah, I mean, Irish people are renowned for being storytellers. You know, our storyteller back home it's called a shanachie, and it's a big part of our culture. You know, the pub back home is the community center. It's the hub. You know, you've another fantastic book, the Great Good Place, by Ray Oldenburg. It talks about the first place being the home place, the second place being the workplace. Now, obviously, with the pandemic, those two things have sort of blurred. But then the third place is somewhere where you go to get rejuvenated or restored. And for some people, that's a gym or the church or whatever, but for a lot of us, it's the pub,
right.
It's the bar, it's the cafe, it's the
it's
restaurant.
So important.
It's hugely important.
They get into that in the America Walks Into a Bar.
Yeah.
Like literally, when they were settling the Americas, like, or at least North America, the United States, you couldn't start a town without first establishing a pub.
Yeah.
It was a public house. Like, it was before a post office. It was before the church. It was like, you want to start a town? Well, okay, put a pub in first.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, it was called a public house then, I think, and over time it evolved
it just
into
got shortened to pub,
Yeah. But that's where everything happened. That was like the town office.
Yeah.
That's where the meetings were held. That's where the politics were. That's where you got your news. That was social media.
Yeah,
that was the
100%.
internet was the pub.
100%. And the shanachie culture like goes back directly what you're saying. It's stories. You know, you go to this space and it's maybe it's a political story or it's a family story or you're like all the stories happen in that environment.
Oh God, I wish I was alive back then.
I know it would have been so it would have been so good, but yeah, so with the bar, that's like we're a nation of storytellers and creatives, and we really wanted to capture that spirit with the bar. You know, we didn't want to just open a space. We didn't want to open a bar and just have a fucking pub and a cocktail bar. It needed to make sense. There needed to be a story, and it's the same with even the cocktails that we serve, the art on the wall, the music that you hear, the soap in the bathrooms, the stool that you're sitting on. everything has to have a story. You're not going to tell everybody if you come in and it's a fucking Tinder date. You're not going to sit and wax lyrical about why you've done everything. But if for people who want to scratch below the surface, we're extremely intentional about everything that we do at the bar.
Yeah. So it's easy to say everything has to have a story.
Yeah.
And it's not as easy to make the story. But what's hard is making sure everybody that you employ knows the story.
Yep.
How
absolutely.
do you do that?
So in that in and of itself has evolved throughout the years too. When we opened, we had I remember people calling the team that we opened with, particularly in the second floor cocktail bar, the sort of Harlem Globetrotters of the bartending scene. You know, we had really famous bartenders working alongside me as we opened the cocktail bar, and I was 21, 22.
Yeah, I was gonna say how old are you? Do you mind me asking?
I think it was 22 when we opened the bar.
That's crazy.
22. Yeah, I think 20. No, sorry, 23. Because it took us 2 years to get the bar open. So, because I won the award when I was 23.
People started saying the name Jack McGarry. You gotta go talk to Jack McGarry. I'm expecting to see this old seasoned guy who spent his life in bars. I'm like, is this the right? I'm like, did I spell this right? Like, you're a young looking dude, you know? Like,
I appreciate the compliment. I don't feel young, but 20 years in this industry is it's like 50 and
32, 33.
I'm 34 now.
Yeah, I mean, you're still a young guy, but
yeah,
I mean, you're pretty well established. You're pretty well accomplished for what you've done, man.
Yeah.
22 years old, opening a bar in downtown or in Manhattan or in.
It's hardcore.
Yeah, man.
Hardcore.
We kind of skipped over Milk and Honey.
Yes, yeah. I went to Milk and Honey for a year before I moved to America.
Was that an evolutionary point for you, or was it just a place to land and get cash?
I thought it was the latter. And I went over, obviously being the head bartender, senior bartender of the Merchant Cocktail Bar when we had won World's Best
Did you say
Bar.
you winked over?
No, we won.
Oh.
We won.
I was like, what?
No, so we had won the award. My accent is very thick.
No, I love it, man. I'm sorry, I keep on asking you to repeat things. I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
So Sean moved out first to America, but we both put our notice in at the same time because, frankly, the hotel, we were getting to a point where we were referring to the hotel as a cocktail bar with rooms. Obviously, the hotel weren't delighted with it, and the hotel was becoming a lot more corporate. They'd added a big extension to the back, and there was a lot of titles and people telling us what to do and that type of stuff. And like I'm still young, but back then I was really raw, North Belfast fella who had a dislike for any authority. So it was time when I knew if Sean was leaving and I was ultimately joining him, I knew if I had been there by myself, my life would have been made an absolute hell. So I was like, I'll take a year, I'll leave the same time, and I'll go and work in London, just make a bit of money and keep taking over. Thankfully I got the opportunity to work in Milk and Honey. But when I started there, it was a huge learning curve because I came in as this, in my head, like head bartender of the Merchant. We've just won World's Best Bar. I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to teach you guys. And I rocked in my first shift, and I was told as soon as I walked in, you're shit, and you're going to do. We don't give a fuck about what way you do.
How
things.
did you receive that?
I mean, it was. In a way, it was liberating because I had all of these expectations and responsibilities with running the bar in Belfast in the Merchant. But when you're told that, you're like, it just brought me right back to that time with the bar manager about the bar back. You know, it brought me right back. Oh, right.
To that. Like, I'll fucking show
you.
I'm
like watch me work.
I gotta work harder. You're already labeled, best bartender, or you're the head of the Merchant, right? You hadn't won best bartender. At this point.
But I'd be like, back then you would have had. I mean, there's still big magazines, but the likes of Class magazine and you had Imbibe and stuff, and they done the hot shots, the next up and comers. I was really well known in the UK scene at that point. Like I came through the same time as a guy called Ryan Shetty, who is from the Dandelion and the Lioness team, and it was me and him that were being mentioned and everything. So I came in with a reputation, but they didn't give a fuck about that. And
so why were they saying you were shit? What were you doing that they didn't like?
Well, the Milk and Honey has a very strict way of working. So I think this came from, so Sasha is obviously a part of this, but particularly the Milk and Honey London iteration, they created a methodology called round building. And it's all about not. So you're built. I was great back then. It was I'll make one cocktail at a time, and if you came in with 4 or 5 people, that's maybe fucking 15, 20 minutes. Where in Milk and Honey, the whole philosophy was you do not build a drink at a time, you build a round at a time. And you execute, or if somebody orders 3 drinks, 6 drinks, 10 drinks, you're making that full round. You're not picking a bottle up more than once. If so, say there's 5 lime juice or 3 bitters of the same, you're building the whole round simultaneously. And then you're serving them the way that the ice reacts. So if you're serving a drink up without ice, like a Manhattan, that gets poured off at the end. But if you're serving a drink up, you make that first, so there's a whole strict methodology around it.
So it's about throughput and efficiency and getting drinks out to make the most money possible with the fewest amount of movements.
Exactly.
Ergonomics.
So
or is that ergonomics?
So I came from an artist and historical perspective. Where they came from a completely different, it was obviously
rent
everything.
in New York's expensive. We got to sell as many drinks as
100%. Well, it was in London. I worked in the Milk and Honey in London. And so that was a big shock to the system. It honestly took me 3 months to get used to that way of working. And then one shift, it was like, I just kept saying, I'm shit. I'd lost all my confidence. And then one shift, it just clicked.
Wow.
And I was able to build, if there was I couldn't take enough tickets when the tickets were coming through the printer. It was like, give me the tickets. But in the merchant, I was an incredibly slow bartender. It took me, there was a guy from Poland who worked beside me. For every one of my drinks, he made fucking 6. Whereas in Milk and Honey, I took that level of performance and art and history and stuff like that and shaped it all around then efficiency. So it was magic. I felt at that point then, that's when I was like, right, I'm invincible. I felt like I was at peak level bartending, and then that's when I moved to New York. And then there was another shock in my system when I first came to New York, because in London, Europe and Ireland, cocktail bartenders are all head down. They're looking at their tins, they're looking at the ice well. Whereas I'm one of the first bartenders I ever seen in New York that Sean took me to see was Doug Quinn, who ran the bar at Clark's, PJ Clark's.
Okay.
And he was a real famous bartender back then, not for cocktails, but as a bartender. And I walked in, and the guy just had the complete control of the room. His eyes were up. It was names all over. People
I love how you discern between not for making cocktails, but for being a bartender.
Yeah, 100%.
I think it's. What do you mean by that? For those who didn't really pick up on, what do you mean? What is the difference between someone who makes cocktails and a bartender?
So a cocktail bartender is somebody that just makes cocktails, and they're not and this is still quite pervasive now. You see this a lot in the high end cocktail bars. The cocktail bartenders will make you feel like they're doing you a favor. You should be so lucky that I'm serving you type thing.
Yeah.
Which is an absolute crock of shit. There's such a level of pretentiousness about it.
Another name is barman. Being a barman. I feel like is another one. But it's just the idea of you're there to provide a service. You're also you're a therapist. You're paying attention. You're entertaining. You're connecting people at the bar, and you're kind of orchestrating the experience, almost like a host.
Exactly. So that's the distinction for me. When I came to New York, that's when I really understood that bartend. So you can be a cocktail person or you can be a bartender. When I seen Doug Quinn working that night, I'm like, I want to take the mad obsessive detail that I have with cocktails and the history that I developed in the merchant. I want to take the efficiency that I learned in Milk and Honey, and then I want to use the vehicle of this New York style of bartending where it's looking in your eyes, it's managing the room, it's seeing the room. Everybody that walks in, hello, how you doing? Walking out, goodbye. When they're coming in, guiding their experience. It's the hospitality.
That's why I go to a bar.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly. And that's why most Americans go to bars. So there's just a big juxtaposition between, and thankfully that's changing a bit. But there's a huge difference between Americans love going to the bar, and sitting in front of a bartender. And in Europe, it's not the same way. There's a big difference.
Communal.
Yeah, you go in, you sit at a table. There's not the same emphasis on the bartender. And you can get away with that. You can get away with just being a great cocktail maker in New York, you cannot get away with it. You know,
Yeah.
but when we opened up the bar, I was like, God, these people, like, they're just coming in and they're on you. The customers, they want your guidance, they want your attention, they want you to shape
I'm so
their experience.
guilty.
No, but I love it. I loved it. You know, so it was that real trifecta of taking the pieces that I learned in the merchant, taking the pieces that I learned in Milk and Honey, and then wrapping it with New York. You know, that delivery, the heads up bartender, and that's what made me, like, we opened the bar 3 months later. I won the award, and the bar won the awards. And
So I was under the impression, I don't know why I thought Milk and Honey, was there a Milk and Honey in New York?
there was, so the original
Okay.
Milk and Honey was in New York.
Okay,
Yeah.
but there was one that opened in Belfast, and that's where you were.
There was one that opened in London.
Oh, London.
In London, because I moved to London for just under a year before I came to New York.
Got it.
Yeah.
So when you came to New York, you did kind of land in New York and just open. And like
No, we still had about another year.
But like when you came, was it like, what were you doing when you got here? Was it working at other places, or
Yeah.
were you working on opening this place? 'Cause
Both.
it takes about a year to open a restaurant.
Yeah,
or bar.
both. So I started working in a bar in Chelsea called Bathtub Gin that some of our business partners own, and I did that 4 nights a week, 5 nights a week, and that was mad intense volume. You know, I wouldn't say it's a great cocktail bar per se, but it does good quality drinks, and they were doing thousands of drinks a week.
Wow.
Unbelievable volume.
So how did you grow here?
Huh?
How did you grow here? How did this help influence you becoming a better barman when you open your own place?
Really, it's about that experience before we opened was, using Bathtub Gin, it's economizing the art, it's scaling the art, it's systemizing the art. So I really learned then about the way that New Yorkers drink, how quickly they drink,
How to do it consistently.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So all of those things, it really tested my bandwidth. But I mean, I got on top of it, and then in New York broadly, in terms of Dead Rabbit, it was meeting the reps, meeting the movers and the shakers. We went in every single cocktail bar. We wanted to know who was who, what was what our competition was. You know, so it was, that whole period was incredibly important, and we were dormant. Like, you know, everybody's like, what are Sean and Jack doing? Because we went from like the summit of Mount Everest, and then we disappeared. Even when I worked in Milk and Honey, I was very I was under the radar. So we disappeared really for a year and a half, 2 years, and then but during that whole time we're pushing the Dead Rabbit. We're talking about the Dead Rabbit.
So this is your first time. I mean, what was your team like? So I mean, it sounds like the path you took was, you know, you just threw yourself and totally engulfed yourself with the world of bartending, learning everything you can, getting the experience, climbing the ladder, meeting the people, getting the accolades, and that gave you access to the people who would invest in you.
Yeah.
Are you willing to talk about partnerships and how to manage those partnerships and how to, like, I mean, because I think it's always awkward, right?
Yeah.
When we talk about money and partnerships, but it's also one of the most important things to be
It's
successful.
huge. I mean, it's a marriage.
Yeah,
failure.
and like, I'm willing to let you talk about what you're willing to talk about, but I'm not going to push the envelope.
No, listen, I'm an open book. Yeah. So we moved over. Connor was the guy that brought us over here, the angel investor, and he knew a guy who owned Irish pubs in the city called Danny McDonald, and he would have been referred to back then as the sort of king of the Irish pub in New York City at that time. And his partners were the owners of Harry's, which is a restaurant just around the corner from here. So between all of those people, they were the shareholders. Connor had sold the vision of our ability. We came here, sold the vision of what we wanted to do, but don't get me wrong, there was a lot of apprehension. You know, they were like, do these guys know what they're doing? You know, we were extremely confident. You know, it's people ask me all the time, were you surprised that the bar done well? And I was like, no, because I stood across the street every night. Yeah. And I was like, we willed it into existence. Right. And I don't say that egotistically. I was not surprised in the slightest, but the partners, there was a lot of apprehension, and they built everything so that if it failed.
So the partners were apprehensive.
Yeah.
What were they apprehensive about?
They would, like, the vision, what we were trying to do.
And how were you pitching that vision to them?
Basically, that we were bringing the Irish pub into the 21st century. Okay. And these guys were like, what the fuck does that even mean?
I'm not going to lie, man. Yeah. I sat down, and when I got here yesterday, and I opened the menu, and I was like kind of blown away. It was a curveball.
Yeah.
I was like, this is like, I'm I'm from New Hampshire, New England, right? Boston. When I go to an Irish pub, it's all the stereotypes you're trying to crush.
Exactly. 100%.
And I was like, this doesn't feel like an Irish pub. And I could tell as soon as I said that, the bartender was like, well, this is what it is like in Ireland. And like, this represents our culture more. And I instantly found that. So I felt like a giant jackass. I was like, oh, I'm such a jackass.
No, but I mean, not at all. And that's what the whole, like, you're talking about telling those stories. And I came over here and I seen customers going to a bar. I mean, I was a customer. I came in and so many people from Ireland were coming over to visit me, and they were taking a picture in a bar, and the flash went off in a cocktail bar. Well, a really well-known cocktail bar. And the bartender was like, you need to turn your light off because it's putting off the bartenders. And beside me, there was this customer that asked for a pisco sour, but they didn't realize there was pisco. Like, pisco was a style of and these bartenders were like making them feel like absolute arseholes.
Right.
You know, it was not trying to build people.
You're not trying to be pretentious.
Yeah.
You're just trying to be true to your culture.
Yeah, and you're enlightening people when they're ready.
Right.
When they're ready for it. You know, you're not going in there like beating your chest, but maybe you're sitting and you're looking at a piece of art. God, that's a beautiful piece of art. Then we can talk about our art. That's the end. But we're not leading right in with that, or we're not leading right in with the cocktails.
For me, it was
drinks.
the menu. Like, I opened the menu and I was like, this is a very progressive menu.
100%.
I was like, holy cow. Like, I wasn't expecting the food. I was like, this place is going to have killer cocktails.
Yeah.
And then I was looking at the menu and I was like, oh my God, this I can't wait to eat.
Yeah.
Like,
well, the food we do here is really good.
Yeah,
but it's
delicious.
But that's the thing. I get that all the time. Like, you say, like, people ask you what do you do when you're out and about in the world, and I would say, I own an Irish pub.
Yeah.
And you know straight away in their eyes are like, the one of these guys.
Murphy's.
And again, if they ask more about it, I'll go into it. But I'm at the age now where I'm like, I don't need to.
You're not trying to flex.
No, I'm like, I don't need to prove myself.
I think I might have pulled you off course. I apologize, but you were talking about trying to share the vision with your partners.
Yes.
And there was apprehension there.
Yeah. So when we came over, we sold them that vision, but they seen our partners, when they deal with their other partners, all their other people that deal with them are quite compliant. We're not compliant, you know. We didn't come over here to say yes sir, no sir, how many bags full sir. You know, we came over, here's what we're doing, you're either with us or you're not with us. It was not a negotiation, there was no budging. This is the way we're doing things, and there was a lot of friction around that, you know, with particularly, you were talking to some of the partners who had 30 years experience in New York, and we were like, no, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
So it was tough, and those relationships are like, and we'll get into it a bit, I'm sure, further into this, but the partnerships are very tough. You have to make sure you pick people that trust what you like, believe will essentially give you the rope and the latitude to do what you need to do. Because there's so many times you see it, and I see it all the time with people when they pick partners that they don't have that full trust, they don't give them the full support, and they start to try micromanage and get involved, and that's where all the tension and stuff.
Frankly, man, like, I'm surprised because I see this a lot, and this comes up a lot in my interviews. The first restaurant that people open in is usually a failure because they have blinders on. They're just so focused on getting the doors open and being able to say that they're a restaurant owner and that they're living their dream, and they just get into the shittiest deals possible. Yeah. Because they're not paying attention. They don't know what's a good deal and what's a bad deal. You're young, you're hungry, you've had this vision, it's chopping away at you. You just want to get those doors open, and you face plant into the shittiest situations because you don't know what to look for. Yeah. Did that happen to you?
Thankfully, no. As you said, as I said, there was
again, 22 years old when we were opening this thing. 24.
We were again extremely fortunate that we have partners with integrity. And
they were the ones that fell on their face, and they said, "We're not going to do this to you."
Yes. Yeah. And they like when the first year we opened, we were, and as you said, like, we didn't know what we were doing. Our whole thing was be the best, be the best, be the best. Didn't care about cost percentages or all of the business sort of side of things. And the partners came in. They had to recapitalize the company in year one. Some other partners would just said, no, you're fucked it, you know, you're done. But they believed in the mission. They put their money where their mouth is, and they educated, like, they showed us, like, here's how you actually it's meant to be.
That's
and you're
another
meant to-
thing I was kind of curious
Yeah.
about too, is because you put all this time and energy into the craft
Yeah.
of delivering drinks and experience. But
Yeah.
what about everything else? Were your partners were they handling the everything else?
Yes and no. So they handled the financial running of the company and the numbers and all of that type of stuff. But it wasn't really until, so I had won World's Best Bar. The bar had done really well, and as soon as like that, going back to that, nobody would ever say I'm the worst again. As soon as I achieved that real narcissistic vision of being realized as the world's best bartender, I fell into an abyss because like I didn't enjoy.
How long did it take you to get that title after opening the Dead Rabbit?
3 months.
Wow.
Yeah, 3 months.
Holy shit.
So it was fast, and it was crazy time. You know, but on the surface, everybody looking from outside in, we're like, he's got everything. You know, he's achieved the dream. Where me looking out, I'm like,
Take us to where you were emotionally.
Well, it was as soon as literally we won the award, and as soon as I put my foot on the bottom of the podium coming off, I knew, because I was relying on this to like fill a hole in me, and I realized.
What was the hole? What was missing?
Oh God, I mean, probably like you're looking back now and you're talking self-esteem and relying on external validation to make you feel complete. And as you know, as everybody knows now, you can't, like, that only takes you so far until it works until it doesn't work. And the wheels really came off pretty much right on after that, and we done like a big world tour, and the bar just was getting busier and busier and busier, and more media attention and all that type of stuff, and I just was not happy.
What do you mean by the wheels came off?
For me, the wheels came off for me. You know, I wasn't happy with. I fell out of love with bartending, fell out of love with the industry. Started.
What was it like showing up every day if you weren't in love with it?
Well, that's when I started drinking a lot.
Yeah.
You know, I started numbing at that period, and then again that worked until it didn't. It didn't. I think I stopped drinking in 2016. Like I woke up in hospital because
Holy shit.
It was hardcore.
Man, I knew you quit. I didn't know the details as to why you quit drinking.
I woke up in hospital.
So you were just trying to numb or fill the void, I guess, with alcohol. You wanted to feel something. You couldn't get it from your work anymore. You got it through alcohol.
I wouldn't say feel. It's not feeling. You know, it was getting away from all the pressures of here, all the stresses of this. It was getting away from. It was honestly turning my brain off. So it wasn't running towards an emotion or a feeling as opposed to running away from stuff. I didn't want to deal. Like I started in this industry incredibly young, and all of that years that I missed out on. They're the sort of years, and this is hindsight and therapy and rehabilitation. All this. They're the type of years where you develop your emotional toolkit.
Yeah.
I did not develop that toolkit. My thing was bars, cocktails, drinking, being the best, and that was my toolkit. I when all of these anxieties and depression and like suicidal ideation and pressures and stresses and stuff were bubbling up.
What was the pressure? Where was the pressure coming from? I mean, you just won best bartender in the world, best bar. You're at the top of the world. Was it maintaining?
I mean, it was. All pressure with me is self-imposed pressure. It's not external pressure. You know, it wasn't pressure per se from the customer side. It was more when customers were coming in now, they were coming in with cameras or they were coming in with videos. They weren't coming in to have a great.
Sorry.
No, this is fine, but it took it. So I don't. There's like a thing where they in the theater where they're like you push through the third wall, or the some type of metaphor that sort of breaks the sanctity of the moment, and that's what happened behind the bar. It wasn't no longer. It felt like I honestly, it got to a point where I started feeling like a monkey, you know, and I was expected to perform for people.
Yeah.
And it wasn't for me. It wasn't about something that I loved doing. It was for other people.
Yeah. Specifically who?
I mean, customers,
okay.
The press, you know, it was just meeting everybody else's
Did you feel
expectations.
Was the pressure from where was the pressure mostly from?
As I said, it was all internal. It wasn't, there wasn't anything that anybody externally did. You know, there would have been the increasing demands on your time in terms of PR obligations and press and travel and stuff like that. But it was mostly the big, like, blowing it all out. The biggest thing was I achieved a goal that I thought was going to make me complete. It didn't make me complete, and then everything started disintegrating. You know, that's really what it all boils down to. There was stresses and other things that compounded it, but it was basically when I realized that. It was at that point where I realized awards are a pile of nonsense, you know, because if you're relying on...
What do you mean by that? Why are they a pile of nonsense?
If you're relying on awards to... A lot of people go for awards for narcissistic reasons, ego reasons.
Well, let's be honest. You win an award, it's going to drive business to
and that's great,
restaurant.
you know, when there is... And I don't mean to denigrate awards per se. Awards are important to benchmark. They're important to reward excellent work.
Yeah.
But to me, it's an output. It's not an input. You know, it's not the reason for the work.
I agree.
Yeah,
100%. No, I don't disagree. I mean, I think that people, yes, to the point you made that it's all for the most part ego driven. Or
well, it's not all. Some people have a better relationship. Like if you're doing great work and then you get an award, that's one thing.
Right.
But if it's your raison d'etre as it was for us when we first opened, that's not sustainable. Because you're not going to win awards all the time.
Yeah, you know? See it in. I mean, for you, it's. I'm not as familiar with the world of bars.
Yeah.
And the awards that are associated with the world of bartending in bars. But I know in the world of restaurants, Michelin stars, Shane Beard's award, like people are chasing awards. They don't think that they've made it, that they've achieved what they set out for until they get that recognition.
Yeah.
But what they don't realize is that to get that recognition, there's a game you have to play.
Yeah.
And that game is politicking.
100%.
That game is talking to the right people. I don't want to. I mean, there's a level of truth, and I don't want to take away anybody who's worked so hard to achieve that and to get that recognition. I don't want to take away from that, but at the same time, I think it's really important that if you got into this industry because of your idols who got these awards and you want to achieve that, and you never do, you know, you'll like it's once you get it to your point, then what?
I mean, you're right. It's a game.
Yeah.
And I think what you're like, you see it now, and you'll forever see it. You know when people are playing the game, particularly when you've won the awards and you've been there and done it yourself. So there is politicking involved. Obviously, you've got to back that up with being great at whatever you do. But there definitely is a game to be played. When we won everything, my thing was that I was fed up playing the game. I was fed up with the performative aspect of it. It wasn't authentic. It wasn't real. It wasn't pure. It wasn't. We weren't doing it. We weren't doing it as the way. Right now, the way we do everything is because of the larger mission of representing Irish culture. Right now, it's about the we. It's not about the I. Back then, it was not like that. It was chasing. It was really chasing a dog's tail, and feeling that pressure of like, how do you keep this going? How do you keep being the bar on everybody's talking about? And then you're dealing with the fact that, right, you're on the top of the mountain, and anybody that gets on the top of the mountain, people who are at the bottom or in the middle are trying to break you down. They're trying to bring you down. And
I worry about when I talk like this that I sound like one of those people, you know?
No. I mean, listen, that's human nature. You see it all. Like even you see it with Simone Biles. You see it with every single person that becomes elite at anything. People want to take you down. It's just it's the way we're built. You know?
Dude, I could talk to you for a whole nother hour. I swear to God, dude. I have so many questions. We have 30 minutes left together. Actually, now's a great time to take a break and thank our sponsors. I'm not going to do a speed round because I'd rather just keep the conversation going.
Cool, no problem.
Because there's more things I want to talk about, but we'll be right back.
We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that right now, Restaurant Systems Pro is offering a no strings attached 60-day trial that will help you improve your systems, increase your profit, and find better work-life balance. All you have to do is click the link below.
All right, we're back, and dude, there's just so much that I'm so curious about your story. We're still 10 years ago, right? Almost to the point, and if we're talking chronologically.
Yeah.
So take us back to that point when you woke up in the hospital. Is it safe to say this is the lowest of lows for you?
Yeah, that was the rock bottom. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So I think we unpackaged why you were there, because you were escaping the pressure of all the you lost the kind of, you fell out of love with the industry and the work you were doing, and you're finding asylum in drinking and just kind of avoiding your responsibilities. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, 100%.
All
Yeah,
right,
absolutely.
cool. So you're here, you're drinking. Like, give me an example of what like a normal night would be like, to kind of paint the perspective of what that looks like. I'm making you get vulnerable here. I hope you don't
of
mind.
course. Listen, as I said, I'm completely open. So everything was great. We started traveling a lot. I was having a lot of issues with my personal life in terms with my girlfriend and a whole bunch of other issues, and we've talked about a lot of the big ones with I've lost my purpose, I lost my drive, I lost my motivation, I lost all of that, and I turned to alcohol. And it worked until it didn't, and then I started just isolating and regressing. It was a good few months, even not far off a year, where I wasn't showing up to work, I wasn't coming in. The anxiety and the depression was like, it was debilitating. And I would have been going to doctors to find out, like, do I have bipolar? Am I bipolar? Do I have anxiety issues? And you were getting medicated for, one doctor was saying this, medicating you, and then the other doctor was saying that. And then I remember going to one doctor specifically, and they gave me a vial of benzodiazepines, and I took one of these tablets and thought that I was cured and started drinking again. You know, it's crazy. I mean, you see these celebrities that are down and all the stuff they had in their system. I had all of that stuff in my system, and it's only by whoever makes the decisions upstairs or whatever way the world works that I'm still here.
I'm sure there's a parallel path for celebrities, because they like a bartender have these goals, these dreams, aspirations to be the best, to get the fame, to get the recognition. Then they get it, and I would never want to be a celebrity, dude.
No chance. Absolutely no chance.
It has to be horrible.
100%.
I mean, you hold these people up, these millionaires, they have such a good life. I just wish I could be like that.
Yeah.
Hell no, dude. The pressure, and then like we're talking about getting there, achieving it, and being like, well, fuck, this is just money.
Yeah.
I'm not happy.
And it's incredibly lonely.
Yeah.
And then that's just perpetuated, like it just continues to get worse. And then to sort of fast forward to that time, that night before, I was drinking, had a big mad argument with my ex, and she went back to Ireland for a planned trip, and I was trying to that point to not drink, because I knew drinking was was starting to get to a point where I was starting to wrestle with that. She left that night, and I went, fuck it, I'm going to go out and get absolutely hammered. And that was a conscious decision. I never really, that was the first time where I was like, I'm going to get absolutely wrecked. Because before that, the wreck part happened, but I wasn't drinking to get wrecked. I was drinking to escape, like to numb everything. And I went to the local bar. It's in Williamsburg, a local bar called Iona. And had a big night there. On my way back then, I started, and I remember this, well, I don't remember it. I was able to trace this with credit card statements and all this type of stuff. And phone records, but I went to like 3 or 4 Duane Reads and pharmacies and brought sleeping tablets.
Jesus.
And then I went home, blended it all up, and then started drinking it like a fucking smoothie.
So you were on a mission.
Yeah, I was on a mission. Like I wanted it to stop at that point. And
I really appreciate you getting vulnerable.
No,
man.
of course. And then again with phone records, I phoned like 911. I phoned somebody to say I just done that. So obviously it was a cry for help or something like that. I don't remember any of that. And then all I remember is the next day waking up in hospital in the psychiatric unit, and I was kept there for a week because of like suicide watch.
Yeah.
And my stomach was pumped, like all this stuff in me. And then the therapist came in and she spoke to me for a couple of hours, and she just turned around at the end of it and said, like, nobody gave me a clear answer of what was wrong. She said at the end of speaking to me after a few hours, you're an addict. And once I heard that, it was the most liberating. Like, that was me at my absolute worst, like the rock bottom that I said. And I was like, so all I need to do is stop drinking and do this work that you're saying, like go to meetings and go to speak to therapists and do all that. And she's like, yep, and it'll get better.
Yeah,
and
that easy and that hard.
And that's the thing, because people come and ask you about it all the time, and like, what did you do? And it's exactly as you said. It's that easy, but it's that hard. Like, you
Right.
know, and that was the start of the sort of recovery. You know.
So, what changed in you? So you shared that you kind of you got disenchanted with the industry. You
Yeah.
achieved all these things, and then once you did, you were like, you're probably expecting the clouds to part, the angels to sing, life was going to be good. Like you had made it at that point,
Yeah.
but that didn't happen. Where are you today?
So when I started first taking those steps in the recovery, that's when it became about what I want and what I really want. Like not superficially want, not narcissistically want. What do I really want? Who do I want to be? What way do I want to turn up the life?
Who did you want to be?
Well, I mean, at that point, it was just figuring all of that out. So
Yeah.
it was a couple of months of just, I went into outpatient rehab. I started doing the work, and the actual work of recovering while coming to work, and that's when I started to realize like why I fell in love with the industry. You know, the storytelling component, the Irish component, the bringing the Irish pub into the 21st century, representing our culture, and all of that.
Yeah.
The big, like the larger missionary pieces of it, is, you know, that's and then to get back to your earlier point about the business fundamentals and learning all of that side, that's when I was like, I need to learn the way I applied myself to bartending.
Yes, dude.
And all of the book, like my book collection for like I had 600-700 books.
You had to fall back in love.
Yeah, I need to apply that now to business,
Yes.
to leadership, to development.
Yes.
And that's really where it shifted from bartending. I was like, I've closed the chapter on the bartending side. I've done it, and now I'm going to do it as an operator, a leader. You know, that's where
all
it's
those
shifted.
people who were in that room with you when you know you walked in and all these all stars of the industry were there and they saw you, they recognized you, right? And they saw all the marks you made in their books, and like now it's your turn to be that person, right? That is seeing the next generation or like inspiring other people, like, or, you know, I don't know, I don't want to put words into your mouth.
No, I mean, 100%, like you're. I also just wasn't happy with the industry. You know, at the industry up until that point, like when I came out of hospital, I'm like, why is nobody talking about mental health? Why is nobody being vulnerable? Why are we going to New Orleans and getting absolutely blocked and hammered? Why are we showing the younger people in our industry that this is normal? Because it's not.
So you've been sober for 8 years now?
Nearly 8 years.
8 years. So this is going back 2014.
So it would be, what are we, 2000? So 7 years, 2016.
2016.
Yeah.
So you kind of come out and you say, well, you know, you it sounds like you were your happiest when you were learning about the world of cocktails, and just your mind was being blown every minute of like, whoa, like I can do this and that, and here's this inspiration from over there, and here's some new history that I can apply to.
100%.
So like you had to get back to that place where you're like, where is this? Where is, like, what is this for me now? What is that for you now? So is it just learning? Is it a business, or like what is that?
I mean,
is it learning about business?
No. So I mean, that's a part of it. I'd say the big thing is getting clarity, and reconnecting with your ultimate why. You know, the ultimate why when we opened this bar was to challenge conventions around Irish culture and Irish pubs and Irish whiskey, Irish spirits, because a lot of Irish culture has been marginalised. It's been pigeonholed. It's, you know, there's a lot of plastic patty and patty whackery, particularly in America, because you have such a strong diasporic culture. But a lot of, like, you hit the nail on the head when you turn up the Irish pubs. Most of them are shite. There's no authenticity. There's no soul. And when I got sober and really just really reconnected with that, and then what way do I want to turn up and achieve? What do I want to do?
What's your purpose?
And that was really it. And for me, then it was leading the company to achieve the bigger picture, the mission, the vision, which is to celebrate contemporary Irish culture, to challenge those misconceptions, to create the world-class company, to scale this company, so that we can further spread our mission and achieve our vision. Ultimately, I want this company to be the biggest and best, not just the biggest, but the best Irish pub company in America, which the Dead Rabbit is one part of that. We have a couple of other concepts that we're launching and working on, but it was really those early days and that first year or two where all of this started to synthesize into I need to work. Like, my leadership was shit. My business acumen was shit.
Now we're getting into the good stuff.
And like, there's one thing, and you touched on it. Like, you start a business as a chef or a bartender, you haven't got a fucking clue about business. You haven't got a clue about how to run a functioning team. You just haven't got a clue about all these things. How to run a P&L, how to fundraise, how to raise capital, how to speak to investors, how to speak to banks, how to negotiate deals. None of that is on your radar. You just want to cook food, serve drinks, look after people. That part is incredibly important, and I never want to take, because ultimately none of it works if you don't have that part right. But I knew we had that part right. All of the other stuff was a shambles. Like, we ran the company like a shambles, and that was really where I seen this is how I best serve the company, by learning this, by developing my ability, so I can grow this.
So what has the evolution for you been over the 8 years for this new perspective, for this new purpose?
I mean, it's been all out. So there was obviously the initial year to really laying the foundation of strong sobriety and my toolkit. But it's been reading nonstop about self-development, business, leadership, all the facets of that. I've done a degree. I've done numerous courses.
What has been your biggest inspiration with the self-development in business leadership? I'd
say the biggest person that inspired me, again, this is very, very early in the recovery. I went to a session by Sean Finter. I'm sure you've had other people here talk about Sean. And I went and listened to him speak, and because again, and thankfully with the work that people like yourselves are doing, when I started to think that way, there's very little literature or content for people to learn how to be a good business person, or how to be a great leader, or how to run a functioning company. So he did a session in New York that basically was a teaser campaign for a larger course that he was doing called Accelerate. And I went and did it. I was like, right, I want to go and to do your session. I was right after. I was like, here's my details. I'm going.
It's the first time Sean Finter has been mentioned on the show, by the way.
No way. It's the first time.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I just looked up his. I was like,
I mean, a lot of the guys that you've had on here have worked with Sean Finter.
Maybe they did mention his name. Actually, you know what? He's in Maryland.
Yeah, he'd be a good guy for you to talk to.
I think they did mention his name. Now that I think about it. Sorry for disregard. But yeah, you're getting into like what he was doing for you and how he helped.
Yeah, so I went down to his session. He has this workshop, as you said, in Annapolis, Maryland, and it's a 3-day workshop, and I done it for 2-3 years. And
wait a sec, is he the Barometrics?
Yeah.
Holy shit, I'm such a dumbass. Yeah, I totally know who Sean is. So many names. There's another Sean who's based on the West Coast, and that's who I was getting.
Oh, you're Sean Kenyon?
Maybe.
Yeah. He's
definitely know who Sean Finter is for sure. I almost connected with him, so I'm totally a jackass right now.
No, he's a great guy. He'd be the guy I'd tell you to talk to for sure. But yeah, I went to his session as soon as I went down, and you go into one of his rooms, and he has his reading list there, and I'm like, send me your reading list, and he must have sent 100 books, bought them all immediately, read them all within a couple of months, but you read these books, and then one of the authors talks about another book that they base this principle, and it's the same way I was with the cocktail stuff. I read one book and it went to 10 other books,
right?
And that's what it did. And then so I was doing all of that part, and then I was also really reconnecting with the Irish piece, and then it was also during that time, to be honest with you, a couple of years in, where I was becoming disillusioned and unhappy with my business partnership. And that cuts both ways, so I'm not saying anything to you that I'm sure Sean, who I opened this bar with, would be saying either, but I wasn't happy with the way that the representation of Ireland was being done, some of the strategic decisions, and you're getting more comfortable in yourself, you're just comfortable in yourself.
Self-aware.
You know who you are. Yeah. There's things that you want and you don't want. Whereas when I was drinking, if I disagreed with a decision, I wouldn't say anything, drink about it, and then move on. Where now it's like, if I don't like something or I'm not happy, I'm going to act on it. You know?
Yeah, for sure. Because you wouldn't, before you were escaping in the alcohol.
Yeah.
you'd be like, I don't like this. I'm gonna go drink it off.
Well, the big thing that I say, I as opposed to running away from my problems, I was running to them.
Right.
You know, and there was a lot of problems, so it wasn't like you see it a lot of people who start to get sober, they try to fix all of the problems right away.
Yeah.
It was like, I'm putting all of the stuff that I can put on.
The things I was avoiding.
I'm going to put, like, I basically put it into shelves. I'm like, here's what I'm going to tackle year 1, year 2, year 3. So it was during that time where I was putting tremendous energy into looking at my vulnerabilities, fixing my vulnerabilities, building myself, building what I really wanted to do and what I wanted to achieve with this company. And then figuring out how am I going to get there.
Do you remember? I mean, I think you've gotten plenty vulnerable enough for us today. I don't need you to open up anymore. I mean, I'm not going to hold you back from doing that. But if you're looking at the shelf, right, and you're prioritizing a list essentially of saying this is the most important, urgent things I need to do. And what was that in terms of the business? How did you start prioritizing what the business needed?
So immediately when I got sober, the tier 1 stuff was me. Like, it's that oxygen mask theory. Like, I needed to put the oxygen mask on myself. I needed to get strong in myself before I start turning up.
You can't lift up other people.
No, exactly. That's just it. And listen, I live that every day. You have to look after yourself. Outside, like I'm a huge runner. I'm a huge reader. I do a lot of things. Like a lot of people in this industry are boastful about working 100 hours a week or 70 or whatever, and I'm like, that's nothing to be boastful over. See, if you're working that much, your system is not set up right.
Right.
You know,
but that's a cultural thing. An issue with our transform the industry.
100%. It's bullshit. And I see it. I see people still, like, I seen somebody who's well respected last year who said they tracked the amount of hours that they work, and it was like 100 hours a week, and they put it on their social media. I'm like, that's nothing to be proud of. Like, I'm sorry, but that's bullshit.
Right.
So I wanted to get that part locked in first, like me turning up strong, right? The second part was then getting quick wins in the business in terms of systematizing things, putting procedures in, putting processes.
Where were you weak in that regard?
I mean, everywhere. We had strong, robust systems that like we had our recipes, we had our way of doing things, but when you're starting to train, like I mean, I could start it off from when you're running an interview. When I was running an interview, there's a great book by Brad and Jeff Smart, Top Grading and Who, and it's they call this form of hiring and recruitment voodoo magic, because a lot of people this is still the practice today in all of these cocktail bars and in our industry. They'll sit down and base a hiring decision whether you go for a beer or like, I'm only going to hire you if I go for a beer with you. And I'm like, that doesn't mean fucking shit. You know, can that person do a great job? Right. Can they serve customers, or can they, like, you've got to have a system in place for how do you recruit, what questions do they ask, what competencies are you associated with your role, how do you onboard somebody, how do you offboard somebody, how do you, like, they're within just people management or performance management, there's a million and one things to learn.
So I'm going to try to paraphrase up to this point. So first thing first was working on yourself. Yeah. Second thing was standardizing, creating systems and processes in your business that were missing. And then third after that was
the overall strategy of the company. Okay, so that's when I started getting disillusioned with decisions.
Where are we going to be in 10 years?
Yes.
Where do we have to be in 5 years to be on track for 10 years? Where do we have to be in 2 years to be on track for 5 years?
100%.
Where do we need to be next year?
Yeah.
And you reverse engineer it.
And that was like up until, like we were saying at that point, like I was codifying our core values, our operations manual, the way that we do everything. And then we had this mission, our mission statement was bringing the Irish pub into the 21st century. And then I was coming into the bar and looking at some of the things that we were doing. I'm like, this is not.
That's why it's so important to say what you want to do.
100%. Yeah,
because then 100%. You can put yourself through the filter.
Yeah.
Are we doing this?
100%.
Yeah.
And then that's where some of the frictions happened. Like we opened up a Cuban bar. And like I realized right away that the Cuban bar that was right after I came out of rehab, and we made so many mistakes because we didn't have.
This was Blacktail.
Yeah, we didn't have it was a lovely bar. A lot of people liked it, but we didn't have the infrastructure in place. We didn't have systems, processes. We didn't have procedures. We didn't codify what we expect, what that looks like, how people behave, what we care about, what our expectations are. None of that was all up here.
Right.
But a new team member
Right.
can't be expected to realize that. So there was Blacktail, the issues with that, the issues with coming into Dead Rabbit, seeing what was happening here, and then we get to the pandemic, and then the pandemic was really that was the
Nail in the coffin.
that was a nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
It was, because it took away. I think well, I certainly was. I think a lot, but speaking more broadly, I think a lot of people are afraid to make risky decisions because they're comfortable in that moment. But when the pandemic happened, I'm like, there's no comfort anymore. Do you know, if this is the time to take a risk.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. You know, that's when the business partnership ended, and now we're doing what we're doing now.
Yeah.
You know.
So I mean, just again, so it's so important. Like, before you can lift others up, behind every great restaurant's a great person.
Yeah.
And that restaurant is an extension of who they are.
Yeah.
Their values, their standards, their expectations. You know, and then you have to recreate yourself in the systems, processes, procedures. Because if you're not there all the time, then how is that standard going to be withheld?
100%.
Right? Protocol, culture, core values, all these things. You got to get it on paper, and you have to get it spread, and people have to be bought in.
Exactly.
Right? And then the next thing you did was you fell back in love.
Yeah.
You fell back in love. You found a vision, a place you wanted to take yourself and everybody else that you could do for the next 10 years.
100%.
That you could be proud of, that resonated with you.
Yeah.
And that was spreading Irish culture
Yeah.
and giving respect to something that you're proud of.
100%.
That's a vision. That's
Yeah.
something. That's a why.
Yeah.
That's something people can buy into.
Yeah.
Right. This is huge stuff, man.
Yeah.
So-
I mean, there was, and that's the thing. Like you were before we started, you're talking about a 10-year success. That this process is a 7-year. Like I'm speaking to people now, and they're like, "Oh God, the company, everything you're doing, it's amazing. You know, the team you have, everything's so incredible." It took 7 years to get to this point. Obviously, we opened the bar 10 years ago, but the Dead Rabbit today and the company we are today and the other things we're doing is so markedly different to what we started with. Like, I look back in that bar that we opened, and I'm like, that was shit. You know, a lot of the things we were doing there were rubbish. Obviously, a lot of it was great too. You know, because we wouldn't have.
What was shit?
Our food was shit. The way that we recruited was shit. The way that we trained people was shit. The way that I led people was shit. You know, it was much more autocratic and authoritative. You know, it was again. I could actually sit here all day and say what was shit, because there was so much that was shit.
Here's the shit list: food, training, leading. What am I missing?
I'd say food, training, leading, business.
Business.
Because we were
strategy.
Yeah, all of those things.
So let's talk about where you were then and where you are today. Starting with food. What is that the first thing you focus on? Would you say, or?
I mean, I'd say no. The first thing I take a real inside out approach. So the thing I focused on first and foremost was the why. What are we actually
Falling back in love.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why? But that, and also, what is the anchor? What's the driving force behind the whole company? And that really is challenging the misconceptions around Irish culture. It's advancing the contemporary Irish
Challenged
story.
the shit out of me when I sat down here. Man. I was like, oh, I had it all wrong.
So really getting that locked in, and then once I had the why locked in, then it became about the how. Do I have the right people on the bus?
Yes.
Are we going in the right place? Do I have the right systems in place? And then what is what it all looks like.
This is
you know?
powerful
So
shit.
that's
why, how, what.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
dude.
it really came from.
Who taught you that?
Well, that's Simon Sinek, the Golden Triangle, he calls it. So
Start with why.
Yeah, start with why. To me, that was the same way I would talk about Dave Wondrich in terms of his catalyst or his place in my mind at that particular time of my life, in terms of how important. Like, I looked at him as like the Messiah. That the Start With Why was really
Simon's
a formative book. Yeah,
his newer stuff, man. I think, have you read
the Infinite Game?
Yes,
that's
dude.
excellent.
And that's back to the why. And it's like, when you have a why, like communicating Irish culture and educating people on like where 21st century Irish culture
100%.
is, like, that's an infinite game.
100%. Yeah,
for
100%.
sure.
And it's perpetual, you know. And yeah, so starting with that, and then getting.
That's not an award for. So sorry, I want to go back into this. Dude. I hope I didn't cut you off. But like an example of a definitive game is getting an award, being the best.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's something like that comes and goes.
Yeah, exactly.
But the best are changing the world.
100%.
Yeah.
And we're like, listen, the sandbox that we're in is Ireland. It's contemporary Ireland. So that's the part of that's what I want to elevate the Irish arts. I want to show the creators of Ireland, the culture shapers of Ireland, and I want to basically provide an experience that immerses Americans into what that is. Because for most people, when they come to Dead Rabbit, or most people as they walk through the door, over half of them for sure, that's as close as they're going to get to Ireland. I want to make sure that you're getting the full proper experience, and it's not fucking shamrocks and leprechauns and shillelaghs. Like, we're much more than that. You know, that was the Ireland of 50, 60, 70 years ago. It's not the Ireland of today. So taking that inside out approach really, like, once I had that locked in, then it was making sure I have all the pieces to tell that, to bring that to life.
Yeah.
You know?
So first you start with the why
Yeah.
to get that, and then what were we working on next? Was it the training or the leadership? What do you think
Yeah, I mean,
or was it all happening at once?
Sort of all happening at once. You know, it's I was like a dog with once I had connected with that, it was like I just started taking a hatchet to everything.
Yeah.
That like when I started with Sean was like, Sean Finter was pick one thing.
I can't believe I forgot who Sean Finter was.
I'm
so embarrassed.
He was he was like, start with one project, do that project for a quarter, and then come back and we'll do another project for the next quarter. So he has like all these different business functions. So there's recruitment, performance management, communications, digital strategy. Like, there's all these buckets that you can focus on. And I went and I when I was first sitting, I'm like, I want to do 4 and a quarter. And he's like, you're fucking nuts. But I did, like,
4 buckets in a quarter.
Yeah, I was like, I'm doing 4 things. And like a lot of people when they go and work with Sean, I feel like they're expecting like him to give you a magic pill, and they make everything better. You know, that's not the way it works.
They could just show you the path. You're the motherfucker who has to walk down it.
They open the door for you, and you have to go through it. So he doing that. So it was I think one of the first things we worked on was the whole architecture around recruitment and culture, and how do we systematize that? How do we build that? You know, he started having conversations with me about, what do you believe? What are your core values? What is your mission? What is your purpose? You know, and these are all terminologies then that were new to me. You know, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I thought core values and mission statements and all that type of stuff was for Google or for fucking Microsoft. You know,
slide this in. How fucked up is it that you were at the figuratively top of your game, right? Winning the best of in the industry, and you had never heard of this shit.
Crazy.
That's what I'm not trying to like talk down on you or anything.
No, it's insane.
It's an issue with the industry.
It's nuts.
It's that we celebrate the wrong things.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's all about money in business.
Yeah.
Because what you were doing is important too, but it's nothing without responsibility, fiscal responsibility, because you're responsible for all the people who come to work for you.
Couldn't agree more. And I still thankfully it's a bit better now with stuff that you're doing and Sean's doing and other people are waking up, but it's still like we recognize people for being idiots or being like, some of the stuff that happens in the industry today. I'm like, really? Like, this is what we're shining a light on this. You know, like, these people don't even know what they wouldn't know a P&L if it hit them in the face. You know, it really, really bothers me.
Yeah.
You know?
So he helped you kind of clarify who you were, so you could attract onto yourself the right people.
Yes.
Getting clear with your core values, your vision, your mission, all these things. Getting the culture committed to paper.
Yeah. So it started with culture then, and then we went into communication systems. It went into,
what do you mean by communication systems?
The way that you speak to your teams, the software solutions that you use. You know, we had a schedule before it was on a fucking Google Doc, or the way that we ran payroll was you know. So we started bringing on scalable infrastructure. So payroll systems, performance management systems.
Can you share what you're using today?
So from a learning management system, we use a software solution called Rise. That basically lays out all of the roles of the company, all of the training paths, and all of the basically like everything that they need to know to succeed in that role.
Right.
For everyone for a year. So that's all laid out. We've done that for if you're a bartender, server, barback, runner, door person, leader.
So I did a workshop on this. We call it Paths of Tangible Growth.
Yeah.
So like you almost need to look at your business as a university.
Yeah, exactly.
And when people get hired, they're a freshman. What degree do you want?
Yeah.
You want to be a chef?
Yeah.
Here's the
Exactly.
the path you take.
Yeah.
You want to be front of house manager? Here's the path you take.
100%. So it was all like, before we didn't have any scalable infrastructure. Now we have it all. Like, listen, we're still going to make mistakes, but I enjoy making mistakes because ultimately we'll get to the right place. But we are a much more professional outfit since that moment where I'm like, right, we're going to fix all of that. But it really it did drive wedges. With my previous partner, he would have been much more like you're trying to overly corporatize the business. You're messing things up. You're making mistakes and there was truth to that. You had to make mistakes. You had to feel your way forward. But
yeah, not every swing's going to be a home run.
Exactly. But I made plenty of mistakes, and I will still continue to make plenty of mistakes. But we had to get the company in a way that we had to set the company up as a proper business.
Right.
Because ultimately, if we don't do that, then we're building a foundation in sand.
Right. Like you can't. It's the difference between having a people-dependent organization and a system-dependent
100%.
organization.
100%.
Your business is worthless if it depends on you.
Exactly.
Because somebody can't buy you.
Yeah.
Well, and if they do buy you, you're not going to be very happy, are you?
No, but it's the same. You see a lot of these bars now, and they're solely dependent on, and restaurants are solely dependent on the chef, or they're solely dependent on the bartender. When you come to Dead Rabbit, you're never going to see me.
Yeah.
You might see me if I'm walking through the bar, if I'm keeping an eye on something, or if I'm with my family, but you're not seeing me.
Yeah.
But you're seeing my fingerprints.
Your presence.
All over the place. And you can only do that. You have to do that through scaling your impact, and you only can scale your impact through building an actual, like, the operating system of your company. You have to spend a lot of time on. I really believe that the system is what we're all system developers, whether it's a good system or a bad system. Or another great quote, I think it's from Deming or somebody in that sort of vein. Every system is perfectly designed for the results that it gets. So if you have a shit bar or shit restaurant, you've designed that you've designed it exactly for what it's doing right in that moment. And it's the reason when anything pops up in the bar, which it always does, or in the company with something happening, I always go back to the system. I never blame a person. I'm like, there's a system error. We need to find the error, and we need to figure out how do we make it better.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I love that. So communications, you talked about that, the recruiting, having like actual framing for growth.
Yeah.
So, and how that information flows and where you can get that information if you do want to grow. What about, so I think that's training, right?
Yeah.
We cover training, cover recruiting. You're not a chef. Your food is phenomenal. Tell me about how you went from not really being proud of your food to like now really like where it's almost competes with attention with your cocktail menu,
Yeah. I mean, again, that was another evolution. We opened and it was
those Scotch eggs, dude.
Yeah, they're so good.
So good.
We opened and it was a thing of you have to have food. So we hired somebody that could do food, and it was okay. It was food. However, my expectations have changed. I'm a firm believer. Again, I talk to books all the time. There's a great book by Michael Levine called Broken Windows, Broken Business. And a lot of it's based on the broken windows philosophy of criminology, which there's a lot of problems. I'm aware there's a lot of problems with that, and rightfully so. But he uses it within the context of you always have to look for the broken windows in your business. So I walk into anywhere now, any type of industry, or like I was in Just Salad half an hour before I met you. And their mies with the garbage was a mess.
Swing that mic to your left for me real quick.
Yeah, their mies was a mess. There was shit all over the place. That's a broken window.
Yeah.
Your bathroom being disgusting. That's a broken window.
Right.
Your team member being disengaged is a broken window.
Do you mind if I ask for a little more context behind that? So I think it was somewhere in New York in like the 90s or 80s or something like that. New police commissioner came in, and that's exactly what he did to find the bad parts of the neighborhood. He looked for broken windows. And the idea is if you accept, I think it was broken windows like and graffiti and
Yeah.
trash, right?
Yeah.
So like if you accept that this is the culture, what you see is reality.
Yes.
So if you fix the broken windows, if you pick up the trash, if you clean up the graffiti, I think graffiti is more culturally accepted
Yeah,
now. Like, people
yeah.
don't really associate it with like bad stuff, but back then it was like bad.
Yeah.
Right? If you what you accept, what you see is reality.
Yeah.
So if you want to change the reality, don't accept that standard.
Exactly. And the getting that to go back to the food, and when I got the clarity and the foundation and I was getting stronger in recovery, I just stopped accepting. I was like, that's a broken window. The food's shit.
Yeah.
We need to acknowledge that it's shit. How do we make it better? And then it was going about finding the chef.
How do you make sure the window doesn't get broken again?
You have to constantly be vigilant. You know, and that's a big thing that I really work hard on instilling with our leadership team and our whole team. You know, when I come in and I see a light bulb out, or I see dust on one of the picture frames, or I see chewing gum underneath the table, I'm constantly saying, like, do you see this? Do you understand that this is not good quality? Do you understand that this is a broken window? The big way to overcome that is through, like, as my role now as a leader of the company, it's communicate, explain your expectations, explain the vision, explain the standards, constantly. All like you just never stop.
Right.
It's not like you can fix a window and then go, it's fixed, and never come back to it. I'm here every single day, tasting the food, seeing the food, tasting the drinks, seeing how the team are operating. I'm close to the business at all time.
Now, that's what like Danny Meyer calls like constant gentle pressure.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you know, the standard and you're constantly putting things back in place when it's not.
Yes.
But do you literally have to be saying it out loud every day, or are there other ways that you can keep that pressure on?
Well, there is now, because again, the big there's 3 or 4 barriers to me, as far as I can see it, for scaling the company that we need to overcome. So
Yeah.
I've talked to you a bit about scalable infrastructure, making sure you have the right systems, your operation system is set. You have the right software solutions, the hardware solutions, the training.
Do you mind sharing your? Am I cutting you short right now? Keep going.
No, go ahead.
What is your tech stack? Like, what does that look like?
So it's split between leadership, so basically team members and then customers. So on the team member side, we're going the whole way through their experience. They are brought in. We have a HR consultant and software solution called Human Reso that takes care of all of our handbooks, all of the compliance stuff, getting all of the legal tax information, all that type of stuff boxed off. Then they get filtered into Paycom, which is all of our payroll processing, scheduling. Then they get filtered into Rise, which is our learning management system. That's where all of the content and the training courses live. Then they get filtered into Slack, which is our communication system. Then they get filtered into Lattice, which is our performance management system. That's where we do our appraisals, our spot checks, our check-ins, really make sure and set their goals and identify their weaknesses and get them to.
Can you say that one more time? The last one.
Lattice,
like LATTICE.
Okay. You know, so we have a whole bunch in the team member side. Then on the leadership side, you've got. We have a couple of different ones. So we have one workflow project management solution called Fellow. We have Toast, obviously, which is our POS system. So there's a bunch for leadership and then a bunch for the team. And then on the customer side, it's making sure that everything's frictionless and as effortless as possible. So we've the likes of your reservation system, Resi. You've event management in Triple Seat. You know, there's other bits and pieces, and then I'm really keeping my eye on and starting to develop our AI side of things, because that's really starting to change the.
What excites you in that vertical?
It excites me because I'm a big believer in, and again, this is another great book, 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. I know he's another complicated character. He's quite a contrarian.
How's your back doing, man? We're just eclipsed 2 hours.
No, I'm good. His whole thing that he prophetizes in his book is leveraging the complementarity of bits and atoms, essentially. So technology and people, and I'm a huge advocate of that. And that was something that was definitely crystallized and compounded during the pandemic. I am a big believer in technology if it leverages the power of hospitality. It's not meant to be used to take away from it. So looking at it through the paradigm of making of taking friction out of anything. So a customer trying to get a reservation, how do we make that frictionless? A customer trying to book an event, how do we make it frictionless? A team member trying to communicate to their leader, how do we make it frictionless? How do we make it easy? Because I believe if all of those things are made easy, then we can get to the big stuff of like how, like, let's deliver consistently world-class experiences.
Well, yeah. Well, what's going to happen is if you don't take the time to respect other people's time, what's going to happen is your business is going to feel like an inconvenience.
Exactly.
Because the world is going to become more convenient. Yeah. So things, if I can't order food from your restaurant with less than 3 taps of a screen, then I'm going to resent your restaurant because it's wasting my time.
And that's really where, when you're getting excited, I'm excited about AI because it basically takes a lot of friction and makes it obsolete.
Right.
You know, it's essentially, we're starting to work now. We're pretty far in terms of developing a AI conversational bot essentially that lives on our website, that you can just go onto our website and talk to it, and it can get you a reservation, it can order you food, it can book an event, it can get your credit card statement from 2 nights ago or 3 weeks ago.
Where are you going to learn more about AI?
I just keep. It's not AI specifically. I'm constantly trying to learn. I'm keeping an eye on everything that's happening and seeing if we can incorporate it. And it's obviously AI is a big one that everybody's talking about, but it's everything. You know, I read extensively through industry magazines, constantly reading about books. Anytime something comes up like NFTs or whatever, I read about it. I'm like, does this something that makes sense for us in that context? No, you put it aside. When conversational AI or when this whole thing with ChatGPT came out, I looked at it, can we take advantage of this? At that moment in time, it was no, but now you're starting to see in some of the companies, the solution-based companies that are harnessing that technology for different things.
The answer is yes, but you haven't seen how yet.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you just keep an eye on it, you know. Yeah. So I believe, I'm a firm believer in that the ceiling today is the floor tomorrow. Yeah. You know, so if you stand still, somebody's going to eat your lunch tomorrow. So I'm constantly thinking, how do we invest, innovate, improve so that this company is future-proofed as much as possible?
Yeah. I think that's actually a good segue. Like, where are we headed? You know, here's something that I like to echo. I think that the industry has notoriously been very guilty of being reactive.
Yes.
We react to the world. We're out of fear. Like, our heads are down working 90 hours plus a week. And we're just like, we do things when we're like, oh, I better do this because I'm afraid if I don't, then, right? Yeah. How do we go into the future more intentional, less reactional? Can we get to that point, do you think?
Well, I think the pandemic was a hugely important moment for me, thinking that way. Again, without beating the death of books, there was a great book by Dan Heath called Upstream, and it sort of goes to like focusing on the problems upstream as opposed to dealing with the downstream symptoms. And when the pandemic happened, everybody had to close their businesses, everybody got laid off, and then we reopened and nobody came back. So everybody was like, well, fucking Joe Biden give everybody money and they're all staying at home. And I'm like, that's an incredibly lazy assumption. I'm like, there obviously is truth to that. There is some people that were like, nah, I'm good. I'm getting enough. I want to sit and play my Xbox. Right. But it's so lazy, you know. I'm like, maybe like let's really, and I do this with everything. I'm like, let's really peel back the layers and assess why people are not sticking with the hospitality industry when we're professing that we want to make it more professional.
There is better options.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like people want health insurance, they want upward mobility, they want
flexibility.
Yes, they want all of those things, and we're not giving them that. Like, we're not meeting them where they're going. And I'm a firm believer in going to the direction of where the ball's going or the puck's going. Like, wherever society's going, we need to go with it as opposed to going against it.
How do we do that?
Well, for us, it was we took a holistic approach in terms of we need to scale the company because we're losing people. So thankfully with Dead Rabbit, we've always looked after people. We've always invested heavily into the culture, heavily into people. So even when we reopened with a full team. Everybody came back, and we're very like, people here make money, but in terms of long term, we've implemented healthcare, we've implemented wellness. We are now creating opportunities for people to be upwardly mobile. We're making sure that we're paying north of fair and best. Like, I would say we're probably one of the best compensation companies in our sphere. But it's also then changing everything around the way that we work. We're a zero drinking culture. We don't stay open to 4 a.m. We're a very professional culture. We make sure that we provide people with great tools and resources and train them and show them how what the best looks like, what great hospitality looks like, what great Manhattan looks like, what a great customer experience looks like. So I'd say from soup to nuts, everything has changed. We're just a much more we're a professional outfit now, where a lot of people still in this industry are not professional outfits. You go to bars now and they're taking shots with customers. They're getting drunk behind the bar. Their team members are feeling them up, or there's all this toxic shit because we're afraid to deal with it. So I'm trying to stay, and to go back to that book I was talking about, I'm trying to deal with it. I really want to wrestle with the upstream, the big issues that create all the small issues. I want to get to that stuff, because if you deal with that stuff, then the smaller stuff will take care of take care of itself.
You said the answer to keep people is to scale. Why is that the answer?
For us, because we lose, if you look at,
there's no upward mobility.
Exactly, and and this is great. Like our we keep people for 4, 5, 6 years, but they go on and they become beverage director. We're making other companies stronger,
right?
Because we're not growing. So that's one of the things where I'm like, we can train this. We've already proven that we can create and we can create world-class people. Like, not that they're not world-class people before they come here, but we can scale what we do. The way that we think, the way that we operate.
Scale your mission.
Yes, exactly.
And that's the infinity game.
Yeah, 100%.
It applies everywhere.
Yeah. So that's one of the big drivers. But that on that side, but it's also bottom up as well. Before, when we first opened the bar, we were hiring in celebrity bartenders. I have no time for that shit now. We're hiring we're hiring for the person, we're hiring for the attitude, and then we can train for the skill.
Yeah.
So we get them in as barbacks, as hosts, as junior people, really immerse them in the culture, train them, invest in them, grow them, and then they start.
The sky's the limit.
Exactly. Anywhere in the company you look at now, there's evidence of that. Every single person on our leadership team started from ground zero in this company, and I want to keep that as much as possible as we scale. I'm aware that we're going to have to hire outside of the company for really specialized functional roles, like a CFO or those types of roles, a HR person. But I'm hopeful if somebody wants to learn that.
The cool thing, sorry, go ahead. If somebody wants to learn that, you can.
We can invest in them learning that.
Yeah.
Because the big thing for me is that they're culturally aligned on what we're trying to do. They believe in what we're trying to do, and they believe in the core values.
Yes.
Of the company. I don't want to work with assholes. I don't want to work with people who don't believe what we believe.
Right. You might have some type of mathematician working for you. You weren't even aware of it. Yeah. Right. And then maybe they want to go to school to be an accountant.
Exactly.
Okay, how can we help you get there?
Yeah.
But I think the other thing that's exciting right now is this idea of fractional executives.
Yeah.
So like a fractional CFO, a fractional CMO.
Yeah.
And it's also cool because these people are now like you need marketing in your business today. So why like a chef would have equity in a business, and a general manager or a front of house person would have equity in the business. Now a marketing person will have equity in your business, because that's a key role to being successful. So people are thinking differently now, and it's super exciting, dude. I want to respect your time. You said you'd give us some extra time, and you have, and I want to make sure we're out of here by 4:30. So is there anything we did not mention before we wrap it up and say goodbye?
I don't know. I mean, you've got everything. You've got pretty far in.
It's fun, dude. You were so generous, man. I really appreciate you taking the time. And
of course,
that's what we do: long format, deep dive conversations. I have no idea what we're going to discuss when we get started. Dude.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's very a lot of fun.
Thank you, man. You were a great guest. There is one question I ask all my guests before we wrap up, and it's usually a part of the speed round, but I'll throw it in here. If you got the news, you'd be leaving this world tomorrow. All the memories of you, your work in your restaurants, or your bars would be lost with your extension, or with your departure, with the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom that you could leave behind for the good of humanity and your legacy. What would those 3 pieces of wisdom be?
I mean, I've always a hard time with these sort of corny slogans, but they do work. I'd say authenticity for me is critical.
One.
Be yourself. Don't let anybody you're here to do you. You can absorb from other people, but you have to be yourself.
So that's one.
That's one. I'd say it's a marathon, not a sprint. So when I first started in this industry, I wanted it all right away, and I'm seeing this a lot with the younger generations. They want to bypass the learning and get to the title that they want, or they want that right away. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
It's an infinity game.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly, and it's enjoy the process, enjoy the journey.
Is that 3?
That would be the third. Like that for me, that's the third, because the journey, like to me, the journey is everything.
Yeah.
Because like it's never you're waking up, you're chasing this every day, but you've got to enjoy. You've got to be present and enjoy it. While we're building this, or while anybody's doing what they're doing in this sphere, like remember to enjoy it. Because you could walk out tomorrow and be hit by a bus. You could have terminal cancer. And enjoy it, and I mean that with every sphere of your life. I see a lot of people that obsess, and this goes back to the 70 hours or 100 hours. Make sure you're giving time to every sphere of your life, your family, your friends. When you're on your deathbed, you're not going to profess about the best technology solution or the best idea you had for your company. You care about the impact that you made, and how you showed up in your life. And then the last one for me, if you can put in a fourth, would be and I'm a big believer in again, I think this is one of Jeff Bezos' philosophy, but regret minimization. So I always ask anybody if they have an idea, if there's something they really want to do, I'm like, sit on your deathbed, would you still regret it then you should do it.
Yeah. I think this is why I'm thinking about buying an RV.
Yeah. I mean, you should.
Dude.
If and I ask myself, anytime I'm faced with a big decision, I always ask that question. If I was on my deathbed, would I regret not doing that? And if the answer is yes, I'm going to make it happen.
Right. Dude, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much. I do have all my guests call somebody out. So who, if you found out was a guest and you did for what you did for us today, who would you want that person to be listen to that episode?
So for me, and we've talked about him a few times throughout this, it would be Sean Finter. He was a real transformative figure in my life. So I would definitely recommend him, because he will challenge your thinking.
Yeah.
And it's really up to you to listen to that and then take it wherever it takes you. But he's definitely somebody that I think is hugely important, and particularly within the context of a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, transforming the industry.
Yeah.
Where is the industry heading? Let's be proactive and not reactive. Sean's right on the tip of the spear in terms of talking about those things.
Yeah.
So he would definitely be the person that I would point you towards.
Beautiful. This has been a lot of fun. And if we're listening to this and we're thinking, you know what, I could work for this guy, I want to be a part of this organization. Maybe I'm Irish listening to this someplace, and I'm proud of my heritage.
Get in touch.
You're opening across the country, Austin right now, New Orleans.
So we're in Austin in Q1 of next year. We have a third location that we haven't communicated yet that'll be open in the summer, which is a Dead Rabbit. We're
Boston.
We're talking about New Orleans. Potentially it'll be the fourth, and then we're launching a new concept called the Irish Exit. So that's our transit focused location that we are opening in Moynihan. So we're only opening these in airports, train stations, and sports arenas.
Cool.
And that is a much more playful and dynamic and much more quick service focused model.
If we're interested in joining your team, because you are growth is the plan, like what's the best way to connect?
My email is jack@thedeadrabbit.com.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so you can send me an email. If you don't send on LinkedIn, because I'm shit at LinkedIn.
Me too, man. I totally get it. This is episode 1022.
Wow.
Head over to restaurantunstoppable.com/1022. We'll have a summary of today's discussion, as well as any links to tools and services that were recommended. Jared, you got your work cut out for you, man. He shared a lot of things, books today. There's going to be a lot of show notes, but man, this is where I say thank you so much, dude.
Thank you for having me.
I'm just a guy who asks questions. You make this show possible. You literally, I couldn't do what I do without people like you. So thank you so much. And there is no questioning. You are unstoppable.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you.